Hey, good morning, and welcome to LPC's public hearing and public meeting of June 9th, 2026. We'll begin by taking attendance, and I will turn to Deputy Counsel John Weiss to call the roll.
Chair Kersavage.
Aye. Here.
Vice Chair Master.
Here.
Commissioner Chen.
Yeah.
Commissioner Chu.
Here.
Commissioner Ginsburg.
Here.
Commissioner Goldblum. Commissioner Quembe.
Here.
Commissioner Jefferson.
Yeah.
Commissioner Mahan.
Here.
Commissioner Wilder.
Thank you. And good morning again. Today's public hearing and public meeting is being held in person in LPC's hearing room on the second floor of 253 Broadway. It is also being held via Zoom and live streamed on YouTube for anyone who would like to participate remotely or watch the proceedings. Our agenda today includes a public meeting agenda for applications for work on designated properties that have already had a public hearing and for which we have already heard testimony and are back today with revisions in response to our comments at the hearing, and a public hearing agenda for new applications for work on designated properties. With that, I will turn it over to Corey Harala, Director of Preservation.
Thank you, Chair Kersavage. And I just want to note that Commissioner Chen is participating remotely via Zoom. We'll start with our Preservation Department public meeting agenda with public meeting item number 1, LPC 25-04617, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Brooklyn, Block 2058, Lot 40, 188 Duffield Street, aka 182 to 188 Duffield Street. The Duffield Street houses individual landmark. This is a Greek Revival style row house built circa 1839. That's number 182, a Greek Revival vernacular style row house built in 1847. Number 184. A Greek Revival Federal style row house built circa 1835 to 38. That's number 186. And a Greek Revival style row house built circa 1835 to 38 and altered in the Queen Anne Second Empire style circa 1883 to 81. That's number 188. All moved to the current site and altered in 1990. The application is to combine the buildings, modify an entrance, partially reconstruct the roofs, interior walls and floors, and rear facades, and construct a new building at the rear of the site. This was last presented at the public meeting of March 17th, 2026, and no action was taken at that time. The applicants will present revisions to the proposal in response to your latest comments after we open the proceedings.
Okay, let's open the proceedings. Commissioner Chu, would you make a motion to open the proceedings?
So moved.
Okay, Commissioner Jefferson, would you second that motion?
So second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, the proceedings are now open and the applicant may begin.
Good morning, Chair Kersavage and Commissioners. My name is Jerry Johnson with the firm of Fox Rothschild, and we're Land Use Counsel for the Duffield Street Houses project. We're pleased to be back in front of you for the 4th time. We heard your comments from the last 3 meetings, and with each iteration, we believe we've refined an appropriate response to what is a very complicated design conundrum. The Duffield Street houses were originally located on Johnson Street, a few blocks away, and were in context with their surrounding environment, a middle-class single-family row house neighborhood dating back to the mid to late 1800s. When they were moved to Duffield Street to make way for Metrotech, they were placed in a very different context, a high-density commercial environment, subsequent rezonings only increasing the surrounding density and now mixed-use context. We believe the proposal before you today maintains the integrity of the landmark designation by reintroducing residential use into the townhouses and responds to the current high-density mixed-use context by providing a new residential tower behind. I'd like to note that over the course of the 3 meetings, the new building has been located further back from the street, reduced in height, and reduced by 2 FAR while still maintaining a 20% affordable housing component. Now I'll turn it over to the presentation to Drew Hartley and David West to go over the details in detail, the changes in detail. Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. Drew Hartley from Atchison Doyle, Partners Architects. All right. We are going to speak about 182 to 188 Duffield Street. The presentation includes a summary of revisions, design narrative, and building design. So we wanted to start with what we heard the last time we were here at the commission, some of the feedback that you provided. So on the left-hand side, we heard that the iterations as we've gone through time, the design changes were not enough. Were not significant from the previous version. We heard that the tower lacked an identity and a specific design intent that ties it to this site and to these landmark buildings. We heard that the tower and townhouse connection was unclear. So the townhouses to the tower and also to the lobby needed to be refined. The outdoor areas needed to be justified, and the height reduction was not significant enough. We took all of that back and we really went back to the drawing board. We will show you today the design revisions that we've made. We think they're considerable, and anchor this building to this landmark site. So we studied how these changes in this building responds to both the individual landmarks and to this site. And speaking about the three components of this building, we have the townhouses primarily, the tower behind and their relationship, and then the third piece is the lobby, which happens right behind the townhouses. In concert, all three of those have been considered and refined so they speak the same language. The townhouse massing, the tower massing is divided into 4 parts. You can see that aligning with the width of the townhouses. We have also divided the tower horizontally as you move up through the space, dividing it into 2-story sections and 3-story sections, which is the reading that you get on the townhouses at the base level. So the massing has been broken down to those townhouse proportions and relate directly. The details have been refined and the connection between those spaces. The courtyard scale has more than doubled from our previous version of this, and its usability has been enhanced. We'll show you that. And overall, the height of the building has been reduced by 30 feet. And just to reiterate, this is a 10 FAR building where one of the previous iterations was a 12 FAR building. Okay, so design narrative. We want to take you back to these houses and what they mean and how they came to this site. These are the 4 townhouses at their original location on Johnson Street. We've heard that before. They represent middle-class residential architecture in downtown Brooklyn. Downtown Brooklyn has mansions in Brooklyn Heights, not too far away. There was workers housing in the Brooklyn Navy Yard, not too far away. But these buildings represent middle-class residential architecture specifically, and that is why they were preserved and became individual landmarks. When they were built here, they were of a group of buildings that were primarily 3 stories tall. That was their context. They were very much in context with their surroundings. And then they were moved in 1990 to make way for the Metrotech development. And they went to a very different context. The building you see on the right-hand side and in the back were there in 1990 when these buildings were moved. So there were tall masonry buildings to the right-hand side and to the rear of these buildings from day one when they were moved to this site. They were put on modern foundations. So the townhouses exist above grade, but below grade is a modern foundation. So this is the context they were put in that they were in when they became individual landmarks in 2001. This is a picture of Duffield Street in 1934. It too was a low-scale street in 1934. However, this is not the context these buildings were put in. This is the context that these buildings were relocated to. So this breaks down in 2 pieces. The black outline buildings were existent in 1990 when the buildings were located on this site. And the blue buildings have been built ever since 1990. But we wanted to show this because this is the context of downtown Brooklyn today. In the mid-1800s, it was low-scale 3-story buildings of this residential architecture of the that was the primary mode of development of downtown Brooklyn. But today, many of the tallest buildings in Brooklyn are right next door. We have the Brooklyn Tower at over 1,000 feet, which is only a few blocks away. So the context that they were originally built in and the context they were put in and created landmarks in is very, very different. So precedent. We have talked about this in the past. I just wanted to focus on a type. There's 6 examples here of buildings that in our view would fall into a building behind a building prototype that the commission has deemed appropriate in the past. This is when a new taller building is set back from the street or set back from the landmark far enough that that building reads as part of the cityscape rather than as part of an addition onto the historic building. The 2 on the right-hand side are examples. The Cody Rizzoli building has a much taller building that is set back from the street. The historic buildings still read prominently in front. And then the Gansevoort Market Historic District building is an interesting example because this one is set back from the street 40 feet. And our building at the closest is 44 feet, and ours goes to 50 feet, depending on where you measure our building. So there are examples that the commission has deemed appropriate that are closer to the street, and we feel our proposal fits into this category of a building behind a building. All right. Building design. So we started this project on the left-hand side, making the townhouses community facility and retail space. We were putting holes through the party walls for ADA access, making all these floor levels accessible to the public. And it caused a lot of new construction in the townhouses. We stepped back from that approach. The last time we met with you, we were returning the 3 townhouses on the right to residential use, which means that we do not need to put ramps through the building. We do not need to move floor levels, and we are maintaining that in the current proposal. The modifications to the townhouses are really focused on the left-hand townhouse, which is 188, this is the entry to the building. It ramps up back to the residential lobby beyond. One of the comments that we received is that at the last iteration, we created a courtyard behind 186 and 188 Duffield Street, and that was roughly 5 feet deep. It was a space that the comments that we received is that it was narrow and it didn't have a clear connection. And we have improved that by more than doubled the space to 10 feet. But more importantly, it's not a contained courtyard, but it wraps around the building and connects with the green space in the rear of the building. So this was previously a contained courtyard, and now it is a use space that is accessible to everyone in the building. There's key card access to the gate coming from the street, and it's a much more usable courtyard. Just looking at that in closer detail. The other important piece here is that all 4 townhouses, the rear of them, are now visible from the lobby. Previously, we were just visible at 188 and 186. Now all 4 townhouses can be seen from the lobby, either contained within the lobby at 188 or viewed through this courtyard at 186 to 182. Okay, so going into the lobby. The images on the left-hand side are our previous design iterations for this space. One of the comments was there was this connection that felt a little forced. That was a tunnel that went between the lobby and 188. That has been eliminated. So the rendering on the right-hand side, you can see that you come right through the rear facade of 188 and you're in the lobby. There's no longer a tunnel or a connector that comes through. And this is a fire-rated glass curtain wall that divides the others. It's because those are on a separate property, and that's to maintain the non-combustible construction that exists on 186 through 182. So there's a fire separation and a lot line between those spaces. 188 the rear will be rebuilt in non-combustible construction, so we can have it as part of the lobby of the building. We also looked the other direction. And I think this was something that was unclear at our last hearing that we wanted to clarify. The lobby itself is really a key third component to this assemblage. We have the townhouses, we have the design of the tower, but the lobby is the knuckle or the piece that ties it together. We are showing cast in place concrete shear walls on the left-hand, right-hand side. And that material comes up and over the lobby and becomes a plinth for the tower to sit on. It also floats above the roof of the townhouses. So there's no longer an awkward connection of the townhouses interfacing with the new building. They all go into the courtyard between the two buildings, which helps to resolve that connection. We feel that by raising this to a 3-story volume all the way across the site, it has a nice connection to the rear of the townhouses, and it creates a nice base for the tower. Just to orient you, on the left-hand side is where you would enter from 188. The reception desks, elevators going up in the building, and mailboxes to the right. Looking at it in section, that courtyard has been doubled in size. It's now over 10 feet deep. And the ceiling of that space has also been raised, so it is above the parapet line of all of the townhouses. The face of the tower aligns exactly with the rear of all these townhouses. However, it happens above, so there's a void between. This configuration allows light into the lobby and allows the townhouses to be freed from other construction. A few views through the lobby. You can see 188 on the right-hand side. This is courtyard to the right, elevators to the left. And then looking back at the reception desk, there are openings in the shear wall that frame the church windows next door. St. Boniface Church is not an individual landmark. However, we feel it's an important part of the assemblage and the context of these buildings. It's not going anywhere, and we wanted to celebrate it as part of this site. And then these are the views that didn't exist the last time we presented. You can now see the rear of both of the brick townhouses as you traverse the courtyard. And this is the courtyard turning the corner and going into the rear yard. This is also our service entry. So the space will be used both for service and for recreation. And then the rear yard of the building is landscaped, and that connection between the courtyard and the rear yard makes it a much more usable, functional space. Okay. So the townhouses. We looked at them again and how they connect to the new tower design. And we, when they were moved to this site, they all have something slightly different to them. 188 on the left used to match 186. It was originally built to be the exact same twin townhouses. In the 1880s, it was remodeled in a Queen Anne style. It's just a nugget of information that all of these buildings have a little bit of history that are a little bit quirky in one way or another, and all tell that story of residential architecture in downtown Brooklyn. As you go down the row, 184 has a double parlor, which is a unique configuration. And 182 on the far right-hand side is a Greek Revival, very charming townhouse with small windows at the top. The interesting thing about these buildings is they all have a history to tell, but as a composition, they're roughly the same width as you walk down the block, but they present themselves as 3 stories and 2 stories and 3 stories and 2 stories. And we feel that variation really gives the composition of these townhouses interest, and it's something that we wanted to incorporate into the new building design. So row houses in general are roughly the same width, but it is that slight variation that makes them charming as you go down a row. So as we mentioned, the context of these buildings has been Metro Tech to the right, has been the Ralph Walker behind. And this new building that we're presenting is presenting back from the street on the far left. It's 44 feet back from the street, and it goes back to 50 feet back from the street. But it's presenting as a background building that relates to the cityscape behind. However, it's modulation that aligns with the width of the townhouses, and then the height of the 2- and 3-story groupings of windows is a subtle connection to these individual landmarks. As you look down the alley from the right and from the left, you can see the plinth or the lobby or glimpses of it at least. It frees the back corners of these townhouses so that they're reading as independent structures. They're not subsumed into a larger building, and celebrates them as unique and interesting landmarks. They're telling a story. As you continue to step away from directly in front of the building, the new building becomes much more aligned with the cityscape. Here you can see it step back from the townhouses, and the views of the new building are cut off pretty quickly as you move away from the site. Looking from the other side, the backdrop that we had of the Metro Tech building to the right is a masonry building and is a similar feeling to our new building that is now behind the buildings. I'm going to turn it over to David West to discuss the building.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. When we last presented the project on March 17th, we heard many comments about the design of the tower, both how it related to the townhouses and whether it stood on its own. There was some consensus that the tower was neither a backdrop nor did it have a strong enough identity unto itself. It felt too vertical and also had some gratuitous architectural gestures, such as a gradation of opening sizes and applied horizontal molding that felt like an afterthought. Our new design is an effort to address these concerns. We've already walked you through the changes at the ground floor. Seen from above, the tower footprint aligns with the rear wall of numbers 182 through 186 and projects 4 feet over number 188. The projection over 188 is new since the March 17th version. The new footprint enabled by this change is 102 square feet per floor, larger than the prior iteration, allowing us to further reduce the height of the tower by another story. This version is 30 feet lower than what was shown on February 3rd. More importantly, the projected bay at 188 creates an opportunity to articulate the massing so that it better reflects the rhythm of the townhouses. It subdivides the facade into 4 vertical bays, adding interest to the facade while lending a more intimate scale. We reconsidered the composition of the facade, testing a variety of directions, and settled on a more restrained treatment using single-height punched openings carried all the way to the top. The facade is rendered entirely in a single-color light orange brick. The big move was to subdivide the 4 vertical bays into 2-story and 3-story groupings relating to the 2- and 3-story primary facade expressions of the townhouses below. These groupings are subtle, created by projected brick frames surrounding the grouped windows and demarcated with cast stone sill courses between each grouping. The cast stone elements relate to a device we noted on the facade of number 184, which has a continuous horizontal brownstone band just below the second floor windows. We've also reconfigured the top of the building to emphasize the 4 vertical bays and add a distinctive silhouette. The overall result is a more refined and delicate facade. The horizontal elements reduce the verticality of the design. It is certainly still a backdrop building, but we believe it has its own identity, very much informed by the architecture of the townhouses. Here you see how this compares to the prior iteration. The three-story packaging on the southernmost bay wraps the corner. It is clearly visible, yet subtle. The elimination of the multi-story windows makes this a gentler, more sophisticated architecture with less vertical emphasis. Note how the townhouses clearly stand in front. They hold the streetscape while the tower acts as a backdrop, reminiscent of the existing lot line walls that presently surround the site. The projected bay at number 188 enhances the layouts on the typical floor. This is a compact floor plan, but the units have ample light and air and efficient yet accommodating layouts. The footprint of the townhouses is indicated with the red line. The building will be a rental with 20% affordable units. These sections show the conditions at the intersection between townhouse and tower. Number 188 will be integrated with the new building, fully abutting and reconstructed with non-combustible material. It will serve as the entrance and frontage space for the new building. The rear wall of 188 becomes one of the enclosing walls of the lobby. At 186, by contrast, we have completely separated the buildings, enabling this townhouse, along with number 184 and 182, to remain fully intact, wood-framed, and occupied as standalone single-family houses. We have widened the area behind this townhouse to 10'4", a more generous and meaningful gesture than in prior iterations of the project. Also visible in these images is the strategy for the foundation. We have benched the slab behind the houses so as to eliminate any need for underpinning. Here you see a view looking up. This view really shows the strong connection of the townhouse rhythm to the massing of the tower. The varied roof lines, window patterns, and proportions of the townhouse facades are clearly signaled by the 2- and 3-story expressions of the tower bays. The horizontal cast stone bands are a subtle but effective way of emphasizing this pattern. Here you see the primary materials. The light orange brick is of the same family as that used in the Metrotech building, as well as the Ralph Walker Beltel Lofts building behind the site. We have selected a lighter mortar to keep the facade feeling bright. We will use stack bond with rake joints in the window surrounds to emphasize this feature. The horizontal bands are a cast stone that resembles brownstone. All metal elements are medium gray. The glass is by Ornolux with bird-friendly UV coating where appropriate or required. Finally, you see board form concrete. This material is reserved for the shear walls and exposed concrete columns at the lobby level. And we have samples, as you can see, which I'm happy to pass around if anybody wants to have a closer look. We've worked out details for the brick using minor recesses and projections to emphasize the window groupings and to make the intermediate piers between windows feel narrower. We have eliminated stone sills in favor of a cleaner, simpler metal flashing. As noted previously, the windows include integrated louvers for an HPAC-style HVAC system. This image shows how the building would be perceived by a pedestrian walking along Gold Street. Due to the surrounding buildings, only the upper portions of the building are visible. Looking north along Duffield Street, the building is largely hidden from view by the new Willoughby Tower. The overall view is largely unchanged. The view from Flatbush Avenue, 2 blocks to the northeast, As you can see, the tower is visible as another element in the new high-rise neighborhood context. There is no view of the townhouses from here, or indeed anywhere beyond the immediate block where they sit today. Another area of concern raised by the commission was the top or crown of the building. Previously, we had attempted to emulate the Art Deco stepping found on Belto. We've changed direction and now seek to complement the staggered roof lines of the townhouses. Each vertical bay terminates at a different height, stepping up and down in the way one perceives the varied heights of the houses. This is a more honest approach and provides visual interest. The bulkhead has a strong vertical expression with a more robust cap than prior iterations. This bears some resemblance to the bell tower crown, but is not meant to be a literal translation. The staccato rhythm at the top bears a resemblance both to the cornice lines atop each townhouse, as well as to the elaborate brickwork atop bell tower, again, avoiding any direct historicist flourishes. The openings within the bulkhead are infilled with metal screens. Some of these will have louvers behind as needed for mechanical equipment. Metal spandrels at the windows just below the crown carry the bulkhead element down to a datum that aligns with the top of the projected bay above 188. Here you see the site plan at a larger scale. To refresh from prior presentations, the houses are set back 14 to 15 feet from the sidewalk. The tower is set back another 28'7" at the closest point at 188 to 34'3" at number 182 and around 38 feet behind 184, making the overall setback 44 feet to 50 feet from the property line. Leaving 20 feet behind, this leaves a tower of 31 to 36 feet deep. Slender, but enough to provide the single-loaded units shown previously. The overall height of the building is 400 feet, 420 to the top of the bulkhead. The crown is predominantly brick with inset metal screens, some of which will be louvered panels. The articulations are formed by step brickwork and the use of rake joints to emphasize certain details. I now turn it back to Drew to complete the presentation. Thank you.
Okay, so we just have a few more street views showing that the building is in a context of tall buildings. It fits within that context. And here it's tucking in next to the Beltel lofts. This is looking from the back side of the building. Its massing is not similar, but in keeping with the types of buildings that are surrounding the site. And finally, we just wanted to bring you back to the front of the buildings. And they were moved here in 1990, so they've been in this site for 36 years, and they've been commercial buildings on their C of O ever since. They've been used as construction offices or storage. They really have been underused. We're excited about bringing them back to residential use and using them as an entry to this larger building. We think bringing life back to these buildings will be good for this block, will be good for these buildings, and we're excited about that. So we think the new building is a unique intervention that ties directly to the design of these townhouses and to these individual landmarks. And we believe that setting it back from the street aligns with the building behind a building concept that the commission has deemed appropriate in other locations. And then finally, the townhouses will be brought back to a first-class condition with full restoration of them as part of this project. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, do we have any questions? Commissioner Ginsburg.
The curtain wall in the lobby, which I realize needs to be fireproofed, is there a fireproof curtain wall that would be frameless?
I do not believe so.
Thank you.
Commissioner Goldblum?
Thanks. This might be a question that's hard to answer, but it's something I'm thinking about, and maybe you can help me with it. The argument for the tower seems to be premised on context, right? The context in which the buildings sit is a high-rise context. Therefore, putting a high building here is contextually appropriate. Why does that matter in the case of individual landmarks?
I think that it matters to this individual landmark because this is the context that these buildings were placed in before they became individual landmarks. If there was a field and an individual landmark was preserved in its original location and things were built up around it, I think that's a very different example than this. These buildings were relocated to this context and then created or deemed individual landmarks. So the context was already there by the time they became individual landmarks. That's why we're trying to relate to both. So we understand this is not a historic district. These are individual landmarks. However, we feel that the context is important because it's it was their context when they became individual landmarks.
That's an interesting observation. So if this had been, let's say, a district, your view about the context would have changed? I mean, if this little 4-building complex plus the church, let's say, was a district, would your thoughts on that, on the appropriateness of the construction, would that change?
I think it would. I think well, it depends on what the district was, but if the district was a grouping of many more low-scale buildings, I think that would be something that was the focus of the historic district. But it's not. The church next door is low scale, however, it's not associated with this
Right.
individual landmark.
Okay, thank you.
Vice Chair Master?
Yeah, I just have two questions. Can you tell me how many residential units are planned for this tower?
I have to read my piece of paper.
Sure. I actually had another question. Oh, go ahead.
It looks like we have 98, 32 0-bedrooms and 66 2-bedrooms.
Okay. And my other question was, in terms of the tower, I know previous iterations we had the lower floor windows being larger, and then kind of the windows above would be smaller. I couldn't really tell from the diagram of, are the windows all along the tower, are they all the same size, or do they get smaller?
They do vary at the base. There are a couple of floors that are taller, and we looked at different ways to handle that. We looked at increasing the size of the bricks around and keeping the windows identical, and we ultimately decided it was more important to keep the brick weight similar from spandrel to spandrel, so the windows are a little taller at the bottom.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Ginsburg?
Do the 98 units include the historic buildings, or are those units a separate count? If so, what are they?
Very good question. I do not believe they include the historic buildings, so there would be 101 units in total.
Thank you.
Commissioner Jefferson?
Typically, when you have two buildings together, the space between them is called an alley. In this case, you're calling it a courtyard. I don't quite understand. It's just 10 feet. Why do you call it a courtyard?
What would you call it?
An alley.
It's a space,
An
it's an open space.
That's better. I think also the important thing is that it's carved out of the building. There's not 10 feet separation between the two buildings with air, but
Any other questions? Okay. I want to note that we received testimony that was shared with commissioners in advance of the meeting. And that included letters from the Victorian Society of New York, Brooklyn Heights Association, HDC, and the Landmarks Conservancy, who recommended denial, and 29 individuals who also recommended denial. So, commissioners, before we start the discussion, I want to say a few words. This is a proposal that raises a lot of unique issues. In 1990, as part of the MetroTech Urban Renewal Plan, these 4 buildings were moved to their current location and went from having a residential context to a non-residential context. The designation report describes them as examples of middle-class housing, but today they are in a very different context amidst the large commercial buildings of the MetroTech development and new residential towers. And to the rear is the individual landmark 1930s skyscraper. That history of being moved and the resulting atypical siting and context potentially allows for a different approach here than at other sites. In this proposal, 3 of the buildings are preserved in their entirety, and 1 is being rebuilt behind the front and side facades and incorporated into the tower behind. So the issue here is primarily related to the proposed tower in the rear. As we know, there's not one approach to appropriateness. There are a range of designs that could be appropriate. I believe the key issues of appropriateness are the proximity of the new building to the landmark, the volumetric relationship to the landmark and the site, and the aesthetic connection of the lower portion of the building and how that is experienced in connection with the landmark. I think our approach to cantilevers is analogous to this situation. The question is, what do you see in connection with the designated property? So let's start the discussion. Since the project has been here a few times now, I'm going to call on commissioners using notes from the most recent discussion, at which time all of you acknowledge that the much more limited physical impact on the historic houses was very responsive to prior concerns and significantly improved the project. I'll note that there was a variety of design feedback that was given on the tower itself, sometimes in competing directions. So Commissioner Mahan, last time you noted that the team had overcome the hurdle to allow a tall building behind the historic houses by keeping most of them intact. But you weren't convinced by the details and design concept for the tower and how it related to the houses. And you had comments about the features of the lobby and courtyard.
Thank you, Chair Savage. So I'd like to begin by thanking the applicant for their flexibility and responsiveness to the sometimes competing comments, as Chair Savage noted. This is definitely an instance of repeated, I would say, quite intensive back and forth and debate, in public realm. And I think we have a much better proposal before us because of that, because the commission has honestly pushed and guided the applicant strongly, and the applicant has responded. And I think we have a better application in terms of appropriateness as well as architectural quality. So I'll try to lay out a few thoughts, beginning with the landmark and expanding out in scale. Commissioner Goldblum raised an interesting question about the argument for appropriateness of the tower relating to the context. I actually think, for me, that's certainly a part of it, but the greater argument, I think, has to do actually with the landmarks themselves. So they've been moved, they've been shuffled in order, they've been reconfigured, and we began, I recall, in the very first public hearing, talking about the meaning of those landmarks and how that has been altered because of all of these changes, right? So these landmarks were intentionally kept and kind of intentionally turned into a bit of a stage set. So you can visit them, understand the kind of historic buildings that did once exist in this area, but as a kind of representation of this middle-class residential architecture that we've heard of. So there's some recognition in their moving and in the designation report that somehow their meaning has been changed. It's been altered. It's been abstracted because not only of their moving to a different context, but because of the reconfiguration. It's been abstracted from its original meaning and somehow removed and turned into some kind of representation. I think there's, by the way, if there are any students listening, I think there's a thesis paper in there somehow. But that being said, I think so the question I recall at the first hearing was how much further change can these landmarks themselves withstand? There was not only the issue of the tower, but also much alteration proposed to the landmarks themselves. That I think has been cleaned up and the alteration has been removed to a significant degree. They'll be restored, and I think I can find that certainly appropriate. That I think will be quite wonderful. So thinking again about the buildings, so the relationship between the buildings and the original sites lost meaning. Their backs have been significantly altered. And the tower massing as massed now, I think, preserves the understanding of the volume of the building. So I think the volumetric of the buildings themselves now is preserved. The idea of the open rear yard too, I think, has lost meaning because of the moving of these buildings, right? When they were moved, they were placed into a context with a tall building at their rear lot line. So they were not placed into a context like their original, where there would have been an opposing rear open yard, a donut, view to an open sky beyond. So they've always had a kind of backdrop, and the proposal before us, in a sense, maintains that backdrop, although moving its location in plan, of course. I think this is well demonstrated by, I think it was slide 26, a kind of oblique, distorted three-point perspective. And in my view, the view of a kind of backdrop is not that different in the existing and the proposed condition on that particular slide. All right, so that's the landmarks. If we move out and consider the context, what's beyond, outside of these particular buildings, we have tall buildings, we have a backdrop, we have dramatic, abrupt scale changes. And so I think, that clearly for me argues that if there's anywhere a tall building could be placed in a rear yard, this is it, for the reasons of the landmark and context itself. Zooming out further, I think that the tower massing is much improved. The 4 shafts that relate to the landmarks is much better, sort of on its own as a composition, as well as an improved identity relationship, I should say, to the townhouses with and drawing its identity, let's say, from them. 2 of these townhouses are no longer sort of artificially grouped together, as was previously the case. I think the grouping of windows into 9s and 6s is fine. It's a nice abstract inspiration, a tool to bring a level of articulation and scale to the tower facade. I think that works well. I think the facade, again, the applicant, at the in response to the commission, has really improved the quality of the facade. There's a much more significant investment here. I think the brick is high quality. Elimination of the slab covers, metal spandrels, is a massive improvement. I think the crown is also good, appropriate. As to the ground level aspects, I think the lobby is fine. Won't be really visible from the street, whether it's to one person's, particular architectural taste or not, I think is not really a matter for appropriateness. So this is a very, very complicated application. We've touched on lots of different sort of issues of meaning, of context, relationships. While not a perfect application by any means, it's come a long way, and I can find it appropriate.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Ginsburg, last time you were generally comfortable approving the proposal as presented, noting that the houses are already in a valley surrounded by tall buildings. You noted that you liked being able to see the sides and rear corners of the houses as part of the lobby revisions, and in general thought the tower design responded well to its context.
Well, I agree with Commissioner Mahan's comments, and so we'll just talk about a few things. This is always, because of the relocated buildings, been a very strange location, and a location where you always had a tall building as a backdrop. So the question is, with the change, is the backdrop going to really affect the historic buildings and how we perceive them? And I think in general, no, I think the changes in the facade have definitely improved it. I think the creation of courtyard or alley behind three of the buildings is significantly better. And then the fourth building being incorporated into the lobby is then perceived within the lobby without the connector piece, which I also think is better. My one comment working with staff is I realize you need the fire rated glass, but anything that can be done to reduce the frame, looking at potentially a different color instead of, I think it's silver now, or if there are any manufacturers who can make a smaller frame, but I realize given the size of it, you need that, and you probably need a fairly beefy structure to make it work. But again, I can find this appropriate, and I agree with Commissioner Mahan.
Thank you, Commissioner. Vice Chair Master, you were presiding over the hearings and meetings during the previous discussions, but could you please go next?
Sure. Yeah, I want to start by saying that I actually read a lot of the testimony that was submitted, and I have to say a lot of it was really well written, and from the preservation groups and individuals who wrote in to oppose this. And I know that some of the comments, I think people spend a lot of time, reasoning through their opposition to this. And I think some of it basically talked about the tower was not appropriate because these are individual landmarks, and that the landmarks would be subservient to a tower. And it wasn't inappropriate given that they were individual landmarks. That seemed to be a lot of the rationale. And I think that in this situation, we have what would kind of be considered, I guess, an adaptive reuse, even though it's kind of residential. And from the start of this process, where the townhouses were essentially kind of being gutted, and there were claims that there was facadism, this project has come such a long way because the individual townhouses, essentially, other than 188, are being restored and retained volumetrically and used for their original purpose, which is as individual residential townhouses. And I think for me, that changes a lot of this. And I'm really glad, especially that in the beginning, there was also talk about maybe moving the townhouses up closer to the street and then retaining more space for the towers so that the towers could be lower in height. But we didn't do that. And we retained, I think, the experience on the streetscape. So when you're walking, you still see that the townhouses are set back, and you experience the townhouses from the streetscape the way that you would want to experience it. So for me, the testimony that was against this proposal was not as compelling because of the retention of the use of these townhouses, the 3 townhouses. And I believe that the towers to me present as a background building. It really helps that you did reduce the tower height, and that there's separation from the courtyard to the tower, and that you've retained the rear facades. That's also very important. I think volumetrically, the massing of the townhouses, the experience really remains, and you've been very creative in this process. Of course, 188, you do have to have the ADA entrance. But even there, I think we can see from the lobby of the residential unit, we can still see the rear facades, and that's very important. And you increase the separation in the courtyard from 5 feet to 10 feet, and you've given us access from this courtyard or alley into the rear facade. And changing that, I think, was very compelling. The other thing, in terms of the design of the tower, I think it's improved significantly. I'll let the architect speak to this, but kind of aligning it with the widths of the townhouse and then varying the height, I think was very clever. So I can find this appropriate. The only other thing that I think we were talking about was the context. Does the context work? And I think it's kind of interesting that this was moved here fairly recently, and that it was moved, in the context of the Metrotech buildings and a lot of taller buildings in the neighborhood. So when you see this tower, in the rear and from other points of the neighborhood, it looks like it belongs. You see it in the context of other taller buildings, with similar materials, so it doesn't look out of place. And because of that, I can find this appropriate.
Okay, thank you. Next, we're going to move to Commissioner Chen, who's joining us on Zoom. And Commissioner Chen, you thought that the massing and design of the tower still lacked logic and required further study.
Yeah, thank you. I agree with many of the comments of the commissioners. I think that this project has come a long, long way. It has never been an easy project. Vice Chair Master put it eloquently. I think that in the context of these decades of in a limbo where all these landmarks deserve to be front and center, and I emphasize the word front and center, as you can see from the screen, is that I am glad that the applicant made the effort to really, really cut back on the height and created a notch as much as it can for presenting these 4 individual landmarks in the context of letting it be visible and not just a facadism, as Vice Chair Angie said eloquently, that the interior is restored and that the lobby is integrated into one of these townhouses on 188. The one comment I would say about the top is that I'm not quite there yet is obviously the crown. However, I do find that is vastly improved over the last time. To me, there's no, unless you want to really put it out in the context of North Dakota somewhere, where you have plenty of open land And the fact that this district and this area has really, really evolved over the time due to the growth of the city, there's no getting around it that the backdrop, whether you move it on this side or relocate it to another site, will be in a similar predicament. And so I also concur with Commissioner Ginsburg's observation that it would be great if we can do that fire rating in a smaller frame. Will be a challenge. But overall, I can find it appropriate. And I'm hoping that this finally put this into a spotlight so that the public can enjoy and see these 4 individual landmarks.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Jefferson, last time you noted that the integrity of the landmarks was already compromised by the proposed building. And the new proposed tower could create a new story or a new narrative. But you thought that the design didn't relate to the houses well enough and were unsure that the reduced height was enough. You also had concerns about the lobby courtyard in relation to the rear of the houses.
First of all, I do agree that the landmark buildings, the occupancy of them by tenants really changes the issue for me, as fellow commissioners said. And this is a really difficult problem because there are 3 elements. There's the tower, there's the space around the tower, and there's the landmark building. So once programmatically the landmark buildings make sense in their usage and occupancy, in the tower, there's only so many design issues you could do with the tower. I think they've done really well with the tower in making it better. I think where my concerns are is the intermediate space. If you go back to I call it an alley because it's not really a courtyard by my definition. And I think that space in between is the most beautiful architectural element that they have in this building that they have not taken advantage of. There's a way that they could have taken the lobby. If you could go back, can we put the image of the section? Page 12, perhaps. Can we change the image? Okay. Go back one. Where the perspectives are. Okay, go back. So this is what we're going to see. So there's a wall that's but 3 stories high on a space that's 10 feet. It'd be very exciting. I mean, I can imagine that, but I can imagine also a way that the lobby and that space could, for the tenants, for the people living there, could be a really exciting kind of, instead of having this vertical wall, the wall could be shifting slightly so that you have a feeling that they're all part of one. They're not demarked by a wall. And I think if that was to happen, if that was the play of that, it's not an alleyway of blocks, I could feel more comfortable about it. And this is the best they could do. And I could find it.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Chu, you commented that it was important that the historic houses retain their low-rise sense of scale at street level and that they were being maintained. You thought the new buildings set behind the houses felt like a backdrop along with the surrounding context, but you had a number of design comments on the tower and thought it lacked identity and wanted to see more about how the scale of the tower related to the larger surroundings.
Okay, thank you. I think that a lot of the discussion that has been had by my fellow commissioners is very, I feel consistent in my reading of this proposal with this discussion. As I look at it and I assess this proposal, it's really about its relation to the designated landmark and to some extent the context, but first about the houses themselves. I do appreciate the many revisions that have brought back essentially what was just a facade to entire house structure, volume, and in fact the floor plates for 182, 184, and 186 are retained, as well as the structure and facades. So in terms of the amount of fabric that is being kept in the current proposal, I'm very much in favor of. I also will echo Commissioner Masters' comment about the relationship to the streetscape. And when I look at this, I'm trying to gauge the change in the effect to the landmark houses and the experience one has as you walk down Duffield Street and see these houses in their context. I think it was the right decision to not move them forward, to keep that space in front of the houses to the street and have the sidewalk more of a gracious setback for the houses. To that extent, I also looked at the images that were provided on Duffield, which I hadn't seen before, which are very helpful to look at. In fact, our context as we walk down Duffield, it is in fact very tall buildings all around. We are in a valley. And as you experience it at a street level, the proposed tower does set back enough to where I feel that my experience at the human scale, at grade, keeps the townhouses very prominent in my view of the street and in my immediate context. So to that point, the protection of the houses, keeping and restoring as much as possible, I feel is good. The approach design-wise to keeping the new work distinct from the houses, I think, has moved a lot. The dial has moved from the initial proposal to where we are now, which has become what Commissioner Jefferson has described as an alley around it. We can talk about how it's being portrayed, but I think in theory, I am in favor of the concept of keeping separation and distinction from the historic houses. The tower above has also gone through many revisions. I think the massing is improved. It's been lowered. There are many different designs. I don't want to get into too much discussion there. The overall massing approach I can find appropriate. I think it does relate in scale as I experience the building from the sidewalk, the division of them into more 20-foot lot type vertical elements, I think, in the staggering of around 4 feet in and out. I think give it a sense of play of light and shadow that I think is helpful. The window scale very much to me helps relate to the houses. I think the proportion of the windows and the revisions I think have brought it to me more comfortable backdrop, and I think it still represents a backdrop building. The brick type I think needs to be just reviewed again with staff. It's not quite clear what the color is. The renderings are hard to gauge. They look different in every one. I want to make sure it feels good as a backdrop and doesn't necessarily stand out too much. I would say that the brick has been shown in detail a lot in the slide deck, but I do think there has maybe not been the rigorous technical dimensioning needed to ensure that we're not getting cut off bricks. Just make sure that the bricks are full runs, half runs on returns, et cetera. That adds to integrity of the backdrop building. Yes. Again, I'm not going to repeat a lot of the comments that were made. It is a very unique situation. I think Michael's comment earlier is very pertinent and it's very interesting, but it is in fact the condition we're dealing with. These are moved to a different area where the existing condition is high rise. It is in this valley. I'm trying to see how different the tower affects the experience of the landmark houses. And I think ultimately, as others have stated, I'm very happy to see these houses come back to use and have life again on the streetscape. So I think that ultimately this proposal is appropriate.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Quimby. You had previously supported the presence of a tall building behind the landmark houses after the proposal changed to preserving much more of the landmark buildings. Last time you had concerns about some design details of the tower and the functionality of the lobby courtyard.
Absolutely a difficult project to work with. I commend the applicant for working with us and actually hearing our comments and suggestions. I will start with the existing individual landmarks. I believe that additional care was taken in order to preserve them. The moves of restoring them and actually giving them a little more space or breathing room actually shows a lot to that gesture. I am okay with one of the rear facades being attached to the new tower. It also celebrates it in its attachment, so I can find that appropriate. I'd like to thank the applicant for increasing the space between the tower and the existing landmarks. Not only does it allow for them to read better as a whole and also help to maintain their identity, but it actually provides an option for additional sunlight to get into the space, which I think will enhance the overall experience. As for the tower, I'm fine with a tower in that location. As I already stated, if you look at the surrounding area, you can already see the assortment of vertical structures in the area. And as was also pointed out, that some of these structures were present before the moving of these landmarks. The landmarks themselves has gone through a enormous amount of change. And because of that, I believe what is being proposed is not too intrusive to the existing landmarks. And I'm glad to see that the landmarks will be able to be revived and to be able to gain as much luster as they possibly can. I'm saying this because the site itself is very difficult, and the position that the landmarks themselves were placed in makes it a very difficult proposition, no matter what really you do. So again, I'd like to thank the applicant for their tenacity in actually trying to bring a plausible solution.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Goldblum. Last time you stated that you were back to being troubled by the concept of having a new building in the rear yard of the individual landmark houses and thought there was significance to the siting of the houses and all the spaces around it. You also offered design comments on the tower design, the sheer walls at the base, and the lobby courtyard.
Thank you. I guess I remain in that same situation. I think that the project as shown is an improvement. And I think it achieved what it sets out to achieve and is successful given the parameters that they have set for themselves. And I understand Drew's argument and hear it. And so I don't really feel that the project as presented is unsuccessful in achieving its goals. I'm more concerned about the conceptual underpinnings of the application. I totally accept Frank's reading of the uniqueness of the site, which Drew echoed, or vice versa. What it implies is that because the buildings were relocated, that their status is somehow debased. They were original and historic and legitimate and real, and because they're moved, that Williamsburgization of them, or Disneyfication of them, into an assembled ersatz collection gives them perhaps less significance, value than they would have had they been located in their original location. Now, I think that that's a legitimate way to view them. And that's, as stated by Drew, one of the bases for why this, in his view, is an appropriate intervention, as opposed to if it were in another location or another situation. So I agree with that as a concept. However, that's not how our law is written. Our law, like it or not, as far as I know, is really, it's on or off, you know, and we look at districts different than individual designations. We tend to assume, although I don't think it's written anywhere, that individual designations have a higher, stricter level of scrutiny than districts, and that whereas districts are kind of dependent on context, right? I mean, a brownstone district is what it is because of its scale and its detail. That's not the standard for individual landmarks. Individual landmarks are looked at as artifacts in their three-dimensional, historical, material essence, and that reality, that corporeality, is what we're trying to maintain. And I think that sense is ratified or enhanced by the commission's decision about the designation of the landmark site. When we designate a landmark site, we draw a boundary. Sometimes that boundary is tight up against the building. Sometimes it's the whole lot. Sometimes it's something in between. And I think that from a kind of, again, an implied meaning that I've always understood is that the boundary indicates the extent that the commission believes or believed at the time of designation that this landmark, that was, you know, the boundary was a defining element as much as the building, right? Sometimes when we put the building right up in the line right up against, we say, okay, you can do whatever you want right on the other side of that line. But when we draw the line, we say what's inside that line is different than what's outside. And I think that argument is made stronger by the fact that in this case, everybody's reacting very positively to the space in front. If the space in front is, as everyone has said, important to the experience of the landmark as a three-dimensional object in space. So for all those reasons, I remain troubled by the presence of the building in the back. I think one thing that I would say is that this project finds itself at the nexus of two different regulatory systems, landmarks and zoning. I think if we could wave a wand and and disregard zoning, this building would be much more appropriate if we're a lot line building pushed to the back, as the Belltel Lofts is a lot line building pushed to the back. It would create more space for our building. It would give a real rear yard to our buildings, and would be a much more contextual approach to the neighborhood's development in that immediate context. But that's just not. I don't have that wand to. We don't have that wand to wave. So I am troubled by this, and as we saw that the applicant showed a precedent, this will become a precedent for other projects. So I think that it argues for bigger policy issues. I mean, I think one way you could solve the issue of debased quality, or the kind of allowing for more flexibility, would be to have grades or some kind of indication within a designation that this is less significant for this reason, and therefore less deserving of protection. But that's not how it works today. So I can't support it as is. That said, some comments on the building as it is proposed. I think that the problem that I have with the building as a design relates mostly to the base and the interface between the new building and the backs of the old buildings. The basic approach that they've taken with the glass wall is to basically try to make that glass wall go away, so it feels like it's all one big open space. And the back wall of that open space is the core of the apartment building, with its wood paneling, and the front is the backs of the other buildings, and that's the glass really isn't there. That doesn't work for me. I think when you look at that space, what you see is a grossly out of scale curtain wall with grossly out of scale columns that submerge the little scale of the residential buildings in a very it makes them look silly. I think that either you got to make that really go away, like Mark is saying, try to really reduce the glass and make the finishes of the interior of the lobby more exterior like, not wood paneling maybe, but make it like a back building, right? So there's a history of back buildings with townhouses. Make it like a back building, or to make the glass wall itself more substantial, make it masonry, have it relate in a more traditional manner to the buildings that it fronts. The other issue is the ceiling. That cantilever is rather perfunctorily detailed. It's a concrete slab that, looking up at it, it's not a courtyard. It's not even an alley. It's got a roof. So by zoning and by experience, it's not that. And I think that there's lots of examples of overhangs that have a kind of intentional relationship with the space below, whether it's a vault or it's a material choice or it's beams, or there's something kind of unconsidered, I think, about that transition from the vertical plane to the horizontal plane as a three-dimensional experience at the back of those buildings that could be improved.
Okay, thank you very much for your comments. Okay, just one second. Okay, I believe that we have the votes to make a motion, but that we're going to recommend that the applicant continue to work with staff on the details of the curtain wall. Commissioner Mahan, will you make that motion?
in the matter of LPC 25-04617-188 Duffield Street, aka 182 to 188 Duffield Street houses, individual landmark. A Greek Revival style row house built circa 1839, number 182. A Greek Revival vernacular style row house built in 1847, number 184. A Greek Revival Federal style row house built circa 1835 to 1838, number 186, and a Greek Revival style row house built circa 1835 to 38 and altered in the Queen Anne's Second Empire style circa 1881 to 83, number 188. All moved to the current site and altered in 1990. Application is to combine the buildings, modify an entrance, partially reconstruct the roofs, interior walls and floors and rear facades, and construct a new building at the rear of the site. I recommend approval, finding that the historic houses were moved from their original, mostly residential and low-scale location and consolidated as part of the development of Metrotech, an urban renewal project that allowed for a multi-million square foot commercial and academic complex, and their current location and preservation within the Metrotech development represents a unique condition, allowing for further development of the site. That the non-historic location and siting of the houses, surrounded by much taller buildings nearby in all directions, creates a context with dramatic scale changes that help absorb the presence of a new tower building behind the houses, where there is currently no character-defining presence of an open rear yard or open sky views due to the presence of the tall individual landmark AT&T building directly behind them. That the most significant volumetric attributes of the houses, including their individual facade and roof forms, small setbacks from the side lot lines, and deep front yards, which was an approximate recreation of their setback from the street at their previous sites, will all be maintained. That the designation report emphasizes the house's significance as a representation of the evolution of Brooklyn's middle-class residential architecture, and the construction of a residential tower behind them on the site doesn't take away from that meaning and would represent a modern expression of this evolution. That the rear addition at 188 was removed when the building was relocated, and the rear additions at 182, 184, and 186 have either been replaced or heavily modified, therefore the removal will not eliminate significant historic features. That the structure, facades, and floor plates of 182, 184, and 186 will be retained as existing, thereby preserving their significant architectural features and most historic fabric, and maintaining the individual character of these houses, 3 of which will remain as individual houses with their own separate entrances. That the modifications to the entrance at 188 will create a barrier-free accessible entrance to the residential tower development, and the proposed paired glass and wood panel doors with a transom are consistent with entrances at buildings of this age and style, and will recall the operation, configuration, and materials of the historic doors. That the construction of 2 brick protrusions to meet FDNY street frontage requirements along the lot line facade of 188 will recall chimney breasts and will not detract from significant architectural features of the building. That the multi-story lobby of the new building will incorporate a rear open court with glass curtain walls framed by light gray metal mullions, thereby providing views of the rear facades and roof lines of all 4 of the historic buildings. That the lower levels and board-formed concrete shear walls of the new building will be set back from the side of property lines, allowing visibility of the rear corners of the end buildings from the street, which will disassociate the new building from the houses and retain the original massing of the historic buildings, and the board-formed surface texture will relate visually to the clapboards of the historic houses. That the deeply set-back location and overall contemporary design of the new building will contrast with the historic wood and red brick buildings and could be read as a separate modern background structure that does not detract from the restored houses. That the slight overhang of the tower over the roof of 188 will not measurably impact the reading of the tower as a background building, and the connectivity between the tower and 188 will allow the tower to be further separated from the other houses. That the orange buff-colored brick punched window openings and subtle changes in brick coursing and detailing of the new building will blend with the brick finishes and details and fenestration patterns, at the secondary facades of the surrounding buildings that already serve as the backdrop and larger context to the historic buildings, thereby further helping the new building read as a separate background building. That the four-part vertical massing and plane changes of the new building behind each townhouse, culminating in a unifying crown and a fenestration pattern featuring windows organized into bays divided into 2- and 3-story groupings by horizontal cast stone bands, will relate well to the facade widths, heights, and fenestration of the individual townhouses below. That the incorporation of short recessed louvers with a dark gray finish at the bottom of each window will facilitate integration of energy-efficient mechanical systems, will match the finish of the windows, and will be partially concealed from view by the brick sills and cast stone banding, thereby minimizing their appearance from the public thoroughfare. That their realignment and elimination of select floor levels and rear facade reconstruction at 188 will not affect the exterior fenestration or be conspicuous as seen through the openings. That the excavation and structural work will be designed and built in compliance with Department of Buildings regulations under the supervision of a licensed professional engineer to protect the buildings, and will continue to undergo enhanced engineering review, and that the proposed alterations and construction of a tower will enable this long vacant or underutilized group of buildings to be restored and transformed to a new residential use, thereby supporting the special architectural and historic character of the individual landmark, and that the applicant will work with landmark staff to refine the details of the fire-rated glass curtain wall at the lobby of the new building.
Thank you. Commissioner Ginsburg, will you second the motion?
Second.
John, can you please call the vote?
Chair Kursavage,
Aye.
Vice Chair Master,
Aye.
Commissioner Chen,
Aye.
Commissioner Chu,
Aye.
Commissioner Ginsburg,
Aye.
Commissioner Goldblum. No. Commissioner Quimby,
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson.
Aye.
Commissioner Mahan.
Aye.
8 in favor, 1 opposed. The motion passes.
Great, thank you. That's been approved. Let's move to the next item.
Right, the next item is public meeting item number 2, LPC 26-03284, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan, Block 1, Lot 111. 111 Andes Road, Building 111, in the Governor's Island Historic District. The Neo-Georgian style office quarters building designed by Rogers and Poor and constructed in 1934, and the application is to install a deck. This was last presented at the public hearing of January 27, 2026. No action was taken at that time. The applicants will present revisions to the proposal after we open the proceedings.
Good morning, Commissioners Ward.
Oops, sorry about that.
Oh,
That's
I'm
my
sorry.
fault. Okay, let's open the proceedings. Commissioner Ginsburg, can you make a motion?
So moved.
Or Vice Chair Master, could you second?
Second?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The proceedings are now open and the applicant may begin.
Thank you. Good morning, Commissioners Ward Dennis with Higgins Quays Barth and Partners. I'm joined by Sandy Berger from Berger Architects. The project here is Governor's Island Buildings 111 and 112. We are located on the north side of the island, just to the west of the main ferry entrance. Sorry. This was last presented to you at a public hearing in January. The application is to install new walkways, Trex patios, and other patios. The two buildings were designed in 1934, built in 1934, designed by Rogers and Poor. The areas of work that we'll be showing you today on the east side to the left, this is the area where we're proposing Trex decking and then new patios coming down here. As the comments at the public meeting were largely about the materials being used and having a more consistent palette of materials, and also about working more with the symmetry of this pair of buildings and the courtyard in between. In response, we are showing still the Trex decking along the side of the east building here, and we've modified the proposal to introduce patios both on the east and the west side using the same material palettes as the patios up above. We've also added more details on the existing conditions because there were questions about that. These are views within the courtyard looking towards the east building. The area to the left right here where you see the plantings is where that Trex decking will go. Also, the area on the bottom right photo in front of these bay windows is where that Trex decking will go. And the photo on the bottom right is sort of taken from the location of one of the proposed patios. Some additional photos, the one on the left showing the stairway and platform. Part of the functional goal here is really to get from where we're standing on this bottom right photo to this platform up here. They're both at the same level, but right now you have to go down and back up to get there. And then some additional photos. This is the area on the top left here. We have grass landscaping coming down to the walkway at Wharf side. This is where the new patios will be installed. And then you can see on the grassy area down below, there are a series of patios that go out through the space. And then on the west side, some additional photos showing the area where we will be proposing a second patio that balances out the symmetry between the two. So this is an overall plan. On the left is the previous proposal. On the right is a current proposal. Previously, we had the Trex decking and then had the Trex decking coming down in a series of steps here. We've modified that so that now we have a patio platform and patios down below, and then a balancing patio platform and patio below to the left on the west. We still have the Trex decking and then a metal bridge that connects this area with this area, which are both at the same level. We also show here the different materials being proposed, the Trex decking here, and then the patio paving, which is larger pavers, which are used throughout the complex in all these areas where you see the seating. Each of those has the patio underneath, so that's consistent use of materials there. And then the existing pathways, the walkways that go in between are this sort of brownish brick. We're not adding any of that as part of this, but that is part of the palette. So the only new material that's being added in plan here is the Trex decking along the side, which I believe the commissioners were comfortable with last time. And then this is just the same, showing the existing condition on the left with the proposed on the right. I can come back to this if there are more questions about the existing conditions. And then we do have detailed plans showing the same as in the overall. And again, I can come back to these if there are more questions. And then details of the existing versus the proposed on the east side. And Axon showing the changes. As I mentioned, the Trex decking remains, and then the patio pavers are the same paving material that's used throughout. On both the east and the west side, there is sort of an upper patio that will have a glass railing around it, and then the lower patio is going down onto the grassy area. And then this is the proposal on the right. Again, we have this upper patio and then a lower patio. And then Axon showing the same. The upper patios, both east and west, have the glass railing. The lower patios have no railings. And again, both are using the same paving material that is used throughout the complex. Details on the Trex covering. The only thing I'll remind you here is that the Trex platform goes up about 2 inches away from the existing building. That allows us to not use any railings on this side. Details of the platforms and the glass railings. And then the overview showing the proposed conditions. So this is the Trex platform along the east building, and then the upper platforms with glass railings east and west, and the lower platforms. Again, all of these platforms use the same paving materials as is used throughout the project. So I'll stop there, and Sandy and I can answer questions.
Great, thank you. Commissioners, do we have any questions? Commissioner Ginsburg.
The color of the Trex, where you picked a sort of wood color, but I know Trex can also come in a gray, which would be closer to the stone that you're using elsewhere. What was the logic in that color selection?
I think the logic was that it would look like wood because it's against the building, what's now a planted area. But I don't know if Sandy, you want to add anything? And I would assume that there's flexibility.
Andy Berger, the architect. It was selected by their design team in Italy. UC Term has a palette usually throughout the world, so they did want this to look like a deck. And we had to go with a deck condition over there because of all of the air requirements down below. We have a lot of vents and issues, so we wanted it to get a different feel than the regular patio.
Thank you.
Commissioner Goldblum?
Yeah, thanks. So looking at the proposed work on the right side versus the left side, was there a reason why you didn't just make it symmetrical to what's already on the one side? I mean, clearly, like there's an extra array of pavers and a wider balcony and a different position for the walkway. Was there any reason for that versus just making it symmetrical?
Yeah, so I think as noted, I mean, obviously this is a very symmetrical arrangement, but it's not completely symmetrical. You notice that there are some differing conditions on the left side versus the right side, having to do with grade changes and the like. And then we'll note that from the public walkway, which would be the area to the top over here, these platforms are largely obscured by bushes and greenery. So the symmetry that you're seeing is really not experienced from the outside, but from the in. Sandy, do you want to talk about rationale behind the arrangement particularly?
Yeah, we were also, the overall site is not, I mean, it's symmetrical in the fact that the pool sits in the center. We were looking for a balanced condition from the left and the right side, or the east and the west. We're also dealing with some unfortunate site conditions. Underneath, there's some tunnels, air shafts that come up on the left side that are not existent on the right side. The other condition that we were dealing with is we had an existing pathway to the sort of an egress pathway. So that was the intent, was to sort of give you the balance to the left and right of the pool, but there is some asymmetry to it.
Thank you.
Commissioner
Just to
Chu?
note, this is that egress that was mentioned.
Okay, yeah, I guess I have two questions. The first was related to your comment on the right side where the Trex is. You said that decision was made because of vents that are below grade of this courtyard that you needed to conceal, and is that the reason?
I just had to let them continue to breathe. There's some air intake where the bay windows are. It drops down 4 feet in that area. There's
Grade goes below this significantly.
yeah. How
Okay.
do I go to the section? Go the other way. So we're dealing with the grade down below, and in there are field drains, air intake, relief valves, all of the mechanical from the basement of building 111.
Okay. So that being a green zone, which would have made it more symmetrical, would have been challenged because of that.
I'm not sure if I.
If you look at the footprint, this desired to be a green zone because it was up against the facade, and typically all the facade had green planting up.
The existing condition had the
Yeah.
green zone. correct.
Okay. I understand what you're dealing with. The other question I have is, if you go back to the plan, the crowds that you've created, these seating areas with thank you. Instead of the stair, which was the hardscape asymmetrical previous proposal. The only question I have is you visually really will notice mostly the glass guardrail that you put there. And my only question is, could you achieve this without a guardrail?
Well, the technicality is that the drop is 4 feet, elevation 17 to elevation 13. And the choice where we landed on the glass guardrail was consistent with the pool. And the pool has also some steps. So we were going with a consistent glass detail.
Okay, I was assuming you could have sloped down into that green zone and avoided the sheer drop in that situation in front of the glass guardrail. On the two sides, it looks like you could have.
You mean done a
Yeah,
berm?
yeah,
Done a
that's
berm.
the-
I see what you're saying.
That was, it's a
I-
question if you considered it, because the glass is probably the most noticeable element.
I may have been able to achieve that on the north side, but on the east and the west side, there was going to be a grade change where I was going to need some railing.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. Point just being the asymmetrical aspect is actually really only seen because of the glass guardrail. Everything else is pretty much on the floor plan, and it's hard to perceive so much that there's a difference.
Any other questions? No? Okay. So commissioners, just since we last heard about this or we had the hearing in January, just wanted to summarize some of the commissioners' comments. There was a general thought that the presentation materials were lacking and unclear, but most thought the proposal in general was consistent with the conditions of the existing courtyard and supported the new decking and door to the side of the courtyard. Some had concerns about the work introducing asymmetry into the courtyard landscape, and now the presentation materials have been updated and clarified, and the proposal has been changed to forego the stepped wood decking at the lower courtyard for more typical pavers used throughout the existing courtyard. And Vice Chair Master, would you start this conversation?
Sure. I think that the changes that you made are a big improvement. I understand that you can't achieve perfect symmetry, but I think it's a big improvement to what it was before. It's much more symmetrical. You're introducing more pavers and less decking material, which is also nice because it also introduces some more greenery. So I can find this appropriate.
Commissioner Ginsburg?
I agree. I can find this appropriate.
Find it appropriate as well.
Commissioner Chu?
Yes, I can find this appropriate.
Commissioner Jefferson?
Appropriate.
Commissioner Mahan?
I concur.
Okay. Vice Chair Master, could you please make the motion?
Sure. In the matter of LPC 26-03284, 111 Andes Road, Building 111, Governor's Island Historic District. I note that the building style, scale, materials, and details are among the features that contribute to the special architectural and historic character of the Governor's Island Historic District. I recommend approval, finding that the proposed work will not damage or eliminate any significant architectural features, that the proposed work will be only minimally visible from Carter Road behind commission-approved fencing and plantings, that the building's rear courtyard fronting the waterfront was previously altered and landscaped pursuant to an LPC approval to feature an in-ground pool, pathways, and lounging areas as spa amenities, and can support the presence of an additional deck and lounging areas, leaving ample open space and plantings between the installations and the waterfront promenade. That the proposed site work and deck will feature composite decking, stone pavers, and frameless glass guardrails and matching previously approved landscape features with neutral finishes that minimize their visual presence within the courtyard. That the proposed modification of a window to a door will remove only a minimal amount of plain masonry while providing courtyard and deck access at the least intrusive portion of the courtyard facade. That proposed new access door will feature divided lights and a matching finish to harmonize with adjacent windows, and that the proposed work will provide additional access and gathering spaces that enhance and support the continued activation of the building, site, and the Governor's Island Historic District.
Commissioner Ginsburg, can you second?
Second.
John, could you please call the vote?
Yes, I note that Commissioner Chen has left the meeting. Chair Kersavage,
Aye.
Vice Chair Master,
Aye.
Commissioner Chu,
Aye.
Commissioner Ginsburg,
Aye.
Commissioner Goldblum, Commissioner Quimby,
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson,
Aye.
Commissioner Mayhem.
Aye.
8 in favor, none opposed. The motion passes.
Okay, thank you. That's been approved. Let's move to the next item.
Next item is public meeting item number 3, LPC 26-06324. An application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan, Block 1184, Lot 1, 3 Riverside Drive, the Kleberg Residence Individual Landmark, also in the West End Collegiate Historic District Extension. This is a French Renaissance Revival style townhouse designed by CPH Gilbert and built in 1896-98. The application is to construct a rooftop addition, alter the areaway, and replace windows. This was last presented at the public hearing of April 7th, 2026. No action was taken at that time. The applicant will present revisions to the proposal in response to your comments after we open the proceedings.
Okay.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Oh, sorry, just one moment. Let's open the proceedings. Commissioner Jefferson, would you make a motion to open the proceedings?
So moved.
Okay, Commissioner Goldblum, would you second the motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the proceedings are now open and you may begin.
Thank you. Good morning, Commissioners. I am Mary Langen from O'Neill Langen Architects, representing 3 Riverside Drive. We are here today to represent back to you our proposal. We were here in April. The comments that we received from you were regarding the elevator bulkhead height, the guard style at the rooftop, and the location of it, and the cohesive nature of the rooftop addition, as well as the front yard areaway wall. So we will address how we have changed that today. The project is located at 3 Riverside Drive. It is at the corner, as you make the corner turn onto Riverside Drive from 72nd Street. This is the historical photos that we have of the Kleberg residence. We presented at the April meeting. You can see on the left photo the areaway wall as it existed in 1898. And you can see the building with the addition of 5 Riverside to the left in the middle photo. This was the original presentation that we showed in drawing 4, which is on the left. 3 is the mock-up that we constructed at the property. And 2 is our revised proposal. We have changed the materials of the elevator bulkhead, and we have changed the materials and the slope of the pergola on the rooftop. We are still proposing to use solar panels on the elevator bulkhead and on the pergola rooftop. And we have changed those solar panels so that they will blend in with the materials that we have changed for the elevator bulkhead and the rooftop pergola. This slide is showing the heights, which we have not changed. We are showing in drawing 2, the previous approved front elevation and our proposal, which is a height change of 4 feet from the previous landmark approval. We are showing here the section. And again, the section. This slide 203 is showing the prior proposal. And you can see here that we were showing on the elevator bulkhead in the prior presentation limestone, a stucco that was to match the limestone of the building. And we've changed that now, as you could see in A200, to a brick coloration, which was something that we had discussed with you at that meeting so that it would blend into the cityscape, which has kind of grown up around the building over the years. And so this is the new material palette that we are using. So you can see the brick that we're cladding the elevator bulkhead with and the solar panels, which will be matching that. We're very much trying to match the brick and the mortar style of the neighboring building at 5 Riverside Drive. The solar panels will be colored to match that color. We are also have changed the pergola so that it is more in keeping with that brick color and more of a brown color. We're also showing you here at the lower portion of this materials palette, the guard material, which we're using for the rooftop, which we're also showing in this drawing. These are the solar panels that we're planning to use, which we can custom color to match the brick. This slide here is very important. So we are showing here why we are in particular using the elevator that we're using and where it's located. We have located the elevator in this particular location because it works with the excavation that was done by the prior owner. So we are keeping it here so that we are not doing any further excavation. We also have a pinch point in our roof here. There are two levels of roof on this building. This is a lower portion here in green, and this is a higher portion. For fire department access, we have a pinch point here where we need to locate a stair here for them to be able to traverse from the lower point to the higher point to the lower point. So we need a stairway here. We do have an attestation from the elevator company because it was discussed at the last meeting as to why this elevator needs to be at this height. So we cannot use a hydraulic elevator. This is an MRL elevator, machine roomless elevator. And it is the height that, this is the lowest height that we can have for this elevator. And there is a letter from our elevator vendor included in the appendix that states as such. And we did work with several elevator companies to bid the elevator. So we know that this is the shortest elevator that we can get that will be ADA compliant and will also be able to take a stretcher. My client is disabled. He has multiple sclerosis. He is committed to saving this building, but he is committed that he has right to enjoy every level of his building, and he would like to be able to use this upper level roof. You can see in this slide where we have changed the guard. So you can see in slide 2 here that we have changed it to the wrought iron, much more in keeping with the style of the building. We have changed the view here so that you can see from the original proposal, this new railing here. You can also see the elevator bulkhead, which was originally in the stucco, and now we have changed it to the brick to complement the neighboring building and blend in with that and the cityscape behind. As well, this is the view from further out as you drive up toward the West Side Highway. You can see we are trying to match the neighboring brick buildings, their copings, and blend our rooftop addition in with the cityscape that's developed around this building over time. This is the elevation of the front yard areaway. We have taken the additional newels out that we added in the prior proposal and brought it back to the original 3 that were in the historical photos. And as this slide shows, we have blended by using different materials, our rooftop addition to make it more cohesive with the coloration of the building, our terracotta roof tiles, and the buildings that have grown up around us, so that our addition does blend in with the context of what has happened around this building over time. Again, this is the areaway and the change to the front of this areaway wall that we are now proposing. Thank you.
Commissioners, are there any questions? Oh, yes.
Yeah, just one note. I'm not sure if you mentioned it, but when this was first calendared, there was also the replacement of or installation of new windows at the back at a bay, which historically had curved sash windows. But that is no longer proposed to differ from the historic condition. They're going to put in curved sash windows to match the others that exist. So that's why you're not seeing that today. That's being handled at staff level.
And since the April 7th public hearing, we received one piece of testimony from Historic Districts Council that was shared with the commissioners. And just to summarize what we heard in the April hearing from commissioners, commissioners expressed concerns about the visibility of the raised elevator bulkhead and questioned the light colored finish and solar panels installed on the wall of the bulkhead as it was calling further attention to it. Concerned that the new visible rooftop elements in general were too busy, that the proposed areaway wall strayed too far from the historic condition, and that the window at the rear facade should match the historic windows. So the applicants have revised the material of the bulkhead and color of the solar panels to blend in with the background materials, made adjustments to the details and finishes of the rooftop railings, screens, and trellis, and have revised the areaway to be much more close to the historic condition. And as Corey noted, that window is being handled at staff level. So Commissioner Ginsburg, could you start this one?
Yes. First of all, I want to thank the applicant for listening to our comments and trying to adjust them. I'm glad to hear the windows in the back are now being maintained, so that issue's off the table. I think it's good to have the solar panels, but changing the color makes it blend in better. And although I'd still find the elevator bulkhead tall, the letter from the elevator company saying this is the best they can do, and I know MRLs are the best besides hydraulics, which this is too long a run for. I can find this appropriate.
Okay, Commissioner Ikwembe.
The refining of the materials really makes a big difference, and the paying attention to some of the suggestions that were made, in particular the areaway wall and the revised number of new posts. That being the case, I can find it appropriate.
Yeah, I think that there have been some improvements to this proposal. My comment is in relation to the elevator bulkhead. The mass is still the same, unfortunately. I do think the applicant needs to work with staff. The details are not here. It's brick, but these panels, are they just attached to the brick? I do think that it should be carefully detailed, even though it's a backdrop. The historic building is so well crafted. Anything that's added to this should have some level of care. So otherwise, it's appropriate.
Thank you. Commissioner Jefferson?
I think they have responded affirmatively, and I think the elevator penthouse, it works, the color blends in somewhat. So I can approve that.
Thank you. Commissioner Goldblum?
Thanks. Yeah, I think it's greatly improved. The areaway, great. Rear facade, curved glass, fantastic. The change in the bulkhead is an improvement. I think I kind of agree with what Stephen was saying about looking at the details of that bulkhead, though. I think that the south-facing panels are okay for me in their new color. Although I would suggest that the applicant work with staff to look at the details as Stephen had suggested, maybe they can be recessed in new construction. Maybe you could recess them in so there wouldn't be a shadow from them into the construction of the bulkhead. The ones that face west, though, I'm still troubled by because A, they're the most visible, or at least they're quite visible anyway. And B, I don't think they're going to be as effective as I would still suggest they put them along their parapet on their terrace facing south. They would not be visible. There'd be no diminution of solar power generation. We'd have a brick tower facing the street, which I think would be a better solution. But I think that can be worked out with staff.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Mahan?
I generally agree with Commissioner Goldblum. I think there's a lot of improvements here. I think, the changing of the coloration of the bulkhead to match the sort of context buildings is a significant improvement. I do not think that the solar panels will blend as well as illustrated in the rendering here. I think they'll look quite distinct and discordant with the context. I think the ones facing west should definitely be removed, and the ones facing south should be considered together with staff. Perhaps leaving them could be a compromise position as proposed by Commissioner Goldblum.
Vice Chair Master?
Yeah, I think that this is a big improvement. I think they can work on the details with staff. I'm happy for them to consider the suggestion that Commissioner Goldblum proposed, but I'm also okay with the solar panels. But perhaps they can work with staff on that.
Okay, I think we have a vote with a recommendation that the applicant work with staff to explore the details of the elevator bulkhead and the placement and detailing of the solar. Oh, and Commissioner Ginsburg, if you could make the motion, sorry.
Figured that, but thank you. With regards to LPC 26-06234, 3 Riverside Drive, the Kleberg Residence Individual Landmark West End Collegiate Historic District Extension, a French Renaissance Revival style townhouse designed by C.T.H. Gilbert and built in 1896-98. Application is to construct a rooftop addition, alter the areaway, and replace windows. I note that the building is an individual landmark whose style, scale, materials, and details are among the features that contribute to the special architectural historic character of the West End Collegiate Historic District. I recommend approval, finding that the proposed work will not damage or eliminate any significant architectural features, that the proposed rooftop accretion, including an extension of the overrun of the previously approved visible elevator bulkhead, will be seen in the context of much taller background building from Riverside Drive, Riverside Park, and West 72nd Street. That the proposed material and finish of the rooftop accretion, consisting of red brick cladding at the elevator bulkhead, reddish-brown solar panels, terracotta colored HVA screening, and brown pergola with visually blend into the red brick masonry of the secondary facade of the taller building in the background. That the proposed metal picket railing at the roof will be simple in design, neutral in finish, and will be set back from the parapet, thereby reducing the visibility from the public thoroughfare. That the construction of the areaway featuring steps, cheek wall, and newel posts with a larger footprint than the missing original areaway will return the ground floor of the Riverside Drive facade closer to its historic condition, and the design of the areaway and use of limestone will be in keeping with the character and materiality of the original with variations to accommodate modern code and accessibility. Working with staff, the details of and location, no, the details of the elevator bulkhead and locations of the solar panels should be refined.
Commissioner Goldblum, could you second the motion? Okay, John, could you please call the vote?
Chair Kursavage,
Aye.
Vice Chair Master,
Aye.
Commissioner Chu,
Aye.
Commissioner Ginsburg. Aye. Commissioner Goldblum.
Aye.
Commissioner Quimby.
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson.
Aye.
Commissioner Mayhem.
Aye.
8 in favor, none opposed, the motion passes.
Okay, that's approved. Please continue to work with staff. Let's move to the next item.
Next item is public meeting item number 4, LPC 26-05940, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Manhattan, Block 1210, Lot 152, 144 West 80th Street in the Upper West Side, Central Park West Historic District. This is a Renaissance Revival style row house designed by Gilbert A. Schellinger and built in 1890 to 91. The application is to construct rear yard and rooftop additions. This was last presented at the public hearing of March 10th, 2026. No action was taken at that time. The staff will present revisions to the proposal after we open the proceedings.
Okay, let's open the proceedings. Commissioner Jefferson, would you make a motion to open the proceedings?
So move.
And Commissioner Quimby, would you second the motion?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The proceedings are now open and begin.
Good morning, Commissioners. Ryan Zeke, Preservation Staff. This item was last heard at the public hearing and meeting of March 10th, 2026. The proposal at that time was to construct a full-height, full-width rear yard addition that met and extended to a rooftop addition. At the hearing, the commissioners present did not support the additions as proposed, commenting that they overwhelmed the scale of the building and eliminated the continuity of the top floors at this row. They requested that the rear yard addition be reduced by a floor to retain the top floor of the rear facade, and that the rooftop addition be set back from the rear facade. The applicant has returned with a revised proposal addressing these requests. This block plan shows the setback and the reduced height. And this revised volume is what we see here on the right. The proposal as previously presented is in the middle. In line with the commissioner's request, the top floor is being retained with a lowered rear yard addition, and the rooftop addition has been set back from the rear, shifting toward the front facade. Mock-ups have confirmed that this will still remain non-visible as it had been previously presented. These renderings show the revised proposal, no perceptible changes at the primary facade, and we see the changes that were made at the rear. Elevations showing the primary and the rear with those changes that we discussed. At the retained top floor, the stucco cladding will be removed to expose the underlying brickwork and stone lintels at the masonry openings. Note also that the brick detail will be restored at the cornice to match the conditions at the row, as we see in comparison with the neighboring house at 142 West 80th Street. Here we see the revised proposal in section. And as noted, although the rooftop addition is shifted toward the primary facade, it will remain a non-visible presence. Here we see the changes in plan and photos showing the mock-up of the relocated rooftop addition, which is not visible from the street. And now Mark Barrick, the architect, is here to answer any questions you may have about the proposal.
Hey, commissioners, are there any questions? Okay, not seeing any. Oh, sorry, Commissioner Chu.
Or for us, the last time this came, did we have a discussion about the block of the L tails on these, or I can't recall what our discussion.
I mean, I think we could go to the block plan.
Yeah.
I would say we pretty much always have discussions on the block plan, and this is one of those blocks where there is some consistency, but there's also some Ls that have been removed and replaced with full-width additions. I think that the commission has approved on at least one occasion, if not in this particular group, then elsewhere along the row. Maybe, Brian, do you have any any more information on that, or is this actually the first addition with, that would have a full width rear addition? Go to the mic.
The original Ls are in place at the other buildings. This would be the first one to be a full width.
Yeah, and I'm just going to make one note about that. The commission does discuss this frequently, but as I've raised at other discussions about the block plans and about the rear Ls, those are not something that are considered significant features in themselves by our rules, which means at staff level, an L could be removed with a staff permit. If, you know, depending on the height and the depth of the addition that's being proposed to replace it, that could potentially also be reviewed at staff level. In this case, the applicant came in proposing a full height rear addition that actually, you know, combined with a rooftop addition, so it wouldn't have met the rules, but I'm just pointing that out for the purposes of discussing the block plan.
Thank you.
Okay, I would just note that we did not receive any additional testimony since the public hearing on this item. Commissioner Ekwembe, could you start the discussion, please?
Sure. I believe that the applicant took our commentary and made the appropriate moves. As asked, the top floor was lowered to reveal the existing building. The rooftop addition was pushed away from the rear facade. And even though it was moved forward, it's still not visible from the street view. And I believe we were pretty much okay with some other items, more or less being the detail and the arrangement of the facade itself. So overall, I can find it appropriate.
Thank you. Commissioner Chu?
Yeah, I think that I can find this proposal appropriate. The only question that I have that I can't, maybe I had stepped out not seeing it, but I'm not finding a dimension of the setback from the rear for the rooftop addition. And I just want to make sure that the substantial setback will not be confused with the top floor.
And my understanding is that it's 3 feet, which
3
is the
feet.
typical standard I think you all look for, and again, also what the staff level rules
Yeah,
require.
okay.
It's
I just don't see a dimension here. That's my only comment. Otherwise, yes, appropriate.
Commissioner Jefferson?
I agree. I mean, there was a time long, long ago when I thought that the scales, that the template for extending, modifying townhouses could be developed that would accommodate scales in some visual manner. But I think that ship has sailed. I mean, I think we have a template, and this is it. And I think we got to kind of stick with it.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Mahan?
I think this looks good. I appreciate the revisions that the applicant has made to closer conformance to the mission standards. Materials and detailing are Hanson, and I can find this appropriate.
Thank you. Vice Chair Master?
Yeah, I agree with the comments. This is appropriate.
And Commissioner Ginsburg?
Appropriate.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Ekwembe, could you make the motion?
Yes. In the matter of LPC 2605-940, 144 West 80th Street, Upper West Side, Central Park, West Historic District. A Renaissance Revival style row house designed by Gilbert A. Schellinger and built in 1890-91. This application is to construct rear yard and rooftop additions. I recommend approval, finding that the proposed work will not damage or eliminate any significant architectural features, that the proposed work will not be visible from public thoroughfares, that the proposed rooftop addition will be set back from the front and rear facades, and the proposed rear yard addition will not rise to the full height of the building, thereby helping to maintain a sense of the building's original massing. That the rear yard addition will not project farther into the rear yard than the existing rear L, and therefore will not diminish the block's central green space. that the proposed light well and setback facades at the lower floors of the rear yard addition will recall the openness of partial width rear Ls at the other houses in this row. That the removal of stucco cladding to expose the underlying brickwork and stone lintels, and the recreation of the corbelled brick at the top floor of the rear facade will bring this portion of the facade closer to its historic appearance. That the materiality and finishes of the proposed rear yard and rooftop addition, featuring punch openings with multi-light and mullion doors and windows, red brick and black painted wood cladding, bluestone lintels, and black finished standing seam metal cladding and roofing will be in keeping with the materials found at the other rear yard and rooftop additions at buildings of a similar age and type within the historic district, and that the proposed work will not detract from the special architectural and historic character of the building of the Upper West Side Central Park West Historic District.
Thank you. Commissioner Chu, could you second, please?
Second.
And John, can you please call the vote?
Chair Savage,
Aye.
Vice Chair Master,
Aye.
Commissioner Chu.
Aye.
Commissioner Ginsburg.
Aye.
Commissioner Goldblum, Commissioner Quimby.
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson.
Aye.
Commissioner Mayhan.
Aye.
8 in favor, none opposed. The motion passes.
Okay, that's approved. Thank you very much. Let's move to the next item.
Right, and we'll also move to our public hearing agenda, starting with public hearing item number 1. LPC 25-10118, an application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Queens, Block 182, Lot 110, 4012 44th Street in the Sunnyside Gardens Historic District. This is a colonial revival Art Deco style row house designed by Clarence Stein and Henry Wright and built in 1927, and the application is to install a skylight.
Good morning, Commissioners. Richard Lowry, LPC staff. I will present the proposal, and the architect Brian O'Connor is here to answer any questions. So the proposal for 4012 44th Street in Sunnyside is to install a skylight on the rear sloped slate roof with some visibility from 43rd Street through the break in the building line. Just as a quick site plan, just showing the proposed location of the roof. Again, this is at the rear portion of the sloped roof. And just from the photograph, you can see the top floor bathroom window roughly will be just above there. As you can see from the proposed elevation. Just the interior side of the attic. This is used to make this habitable space. And just to show the low profile of the skylight. So show where our location is with the little red and black circle, and then the other areas circled are other approvals that the commission has issued for similar skylights on slope roofs in the district. Visibility, again, from 43rd Street is from various points along through that break in the building wall. And that really this is like the highest visibility portion here through the foliage. This is taken at winter, which would probably be the most visible. But that's the extent of the visibility from 43rd Street. Okay, so thank you, Commissioners. Brian's here to answer any questions if you have any.
Do we have any questions, Commissioners? Commissioner Chu?
Just to be clear, the skylight is facing the internal courtyard. It's hard to tell where it is, the house. In the
That's correct.
picture.
It's on the rear slope of the roof.
Inside the court.
Yeah, so it's only visible through that break across the central green space at the rear facade and rear slope.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, and Commissioners, I just want to note that we've seen a few of these in Sunnyside Gardens and elsewhere. Really, the only reason this is before you today is because the skylight would be installed through the slate roof of these houses. And in general, we consider slate roofing to be, significant material. However, you all have approved this on many occasions, and this will be part of an upcoming rules amendments package, which will actually have an entirely new section for rooftop skylights, and it would allow for sort of modest installations through slate roofing, particularly on rear-facing slopes.
Okay, thank you. And let's move to public testimony. We don't see anybody in the room here, so we're going to move to Elizabeth Lee for Zoom testimony.
Those joining via Zoom who wish to speak, please use the raise hand function. Seeing none, on note for the record that Queens Community Board 2 recommends approval.
Okay, and would you like to respond to any testimony, that approval from the community board? No? Okay. Okay, great. Commissioners, any final questions? No? Let's close the hearing. Commissioner Mann, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
Vice Chair Master, will you second the motion?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The hearing is closed. Commissioner Chu, would you start the discussion?
Sure, it's appropriate.
Is there anything anybody would like to add? Okay, then.
Just, I agree it's appropriate, but having lived for a year in Sunnyside Gardens, the rooms are small and dark, so adding the skylight will improve the quality of the interior space. So additional to being appropriate, it's a positive change.
Terrific, thank you. Commissioner Chu, would you read the motion, please?
Sure. In the case of LPC 25-10-118-40-12-44th Street, Sunnyside Gardens Historic District, a colonial revival Art Deco style row house designed by Clarence Stein and Henry Wright and built in 1927. Application is to install a skylight. I recommend approval, finding that the proposed installation will remove only a limited area of slate shingles at the roof. The skylight will be located at the rear slope of the roof and will only be visible from a public thoroughfare at a distance and from limited vantage points. That the low profile of the skylight will preserve the silhouette of the roof and its relationship to other houses in the row. That there are other skylights installed at pitched roofs within the historic district, and this work reflects adaptive reuse of the attic spaces of these very small houses over time. And that the work will not detract from the special architectural and historic character of the building or the Sunnyside Gardens Historic District.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Jefferson, will you second that motion?
So second.
John, can you please call the vote?
Chair Kursavage,
Aye.
Vice Chair Master,
Aye.
Commissioner Chu.
Aye.
Commissioner Ginsburg,
Aye.
Commissioner Goldblum, Commissioner Quimby,
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson, Commissioner Mann.
Aye.
8 in favor, none opposed. The motion passes.
Okay, that's approved. Thank you very much. Let's move to our next item.
Right, next item is public hearing item number 2, LPC 26-09457. An application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Brooklyn, Block 2102, Lot 3, 265 Cumberland Street in the Fort Greene Historic District. This is a residential building built in 2003, and the application is to reclad and alter the facade and construct a rooftop addition.
My name is Richard Boshin. I'm the architect for this project. This is an unusual project for landmarks because the building's only about 22 years old and was built under the landmarks, with landmarks approval. This is actually a photograph of the previous building that was there when the district was designated. And it was a wood frame building that came down, I'm not sure when, but the new one was built in 2002, 3, and 4. This is a picture of the existing front facade from Cumberland Street. And one of the things that the commission talked about when they approved this was that it had the massing of a row house, not a row house, a carriage house, which is one of the things that appealed to the current owners, and one of the things that we're trying to make more of and improve on. This is a photograph of the rear, backyard. These are close-ups of the existing brick, which is one of the things that we're trying to improve on. The existing bricks, it's a Flemish bond, which isn't particularly non-historic. It's unusual for this district, but it's not, it's been around for centuries. What's different about this is that the bricks are all high-fired, they're modern, they're very sharp-edged, and the front faces have a different texture than the edges, which gives the pattern, the sort of checkerboard pattern that you see here. The front face, it looks to me like it was done with some sort of a wire, somehow wire cut. It's rougher, whereas the rest of it is smooth. And a number of the details kind of don't match the historic. The headers are clearly not structural, they're decorative, and those sorts of issues. These are existing plans. These are the proposed plans with the new floor and the roof plan on the right. What I hope it shows, this one particularly, is that we're trying to get a little bit more light into the building, and we're also you'll see on this one in the back, we're digging down so that the cellar gets some light. And part of the idea there is that we can make better use of the cellar and not have to make the top floor quite as large and let it step back in the front. These are before and after photographs of the front facade. Left is before and right is after. It's a rendering. Besides changing the material of the front facade, and we're also opening a much bigger opening at the bottom, which is more reminiscent of a carriage house. And the top, as you'll see, it steps back and it takes its cues from the building on the right. In this case, it's standing seam metal as opposed to slate, but it's a similar character. This is an explanation of the top floor addition, which has 3 separate outdoor areas. On the left, on the top, it's the one in the back. There's one in the middle, which relates to the stairwell. And then there's the one in the front that allows the addition to step back and be less, and reduce the massing. These are, on the bottom is the front elevation. Left is existing, right is the proposed, and all the way on the right is a 3D vision. The top is the rear. You can see, one of the main things you can see here is in the cellar that we're digging that out to get a lot of light into the cellar. And the right shows how that looks from the back wall. That's pretty much backed up all the way against the property line. So these are some of the materials. We're adding a bigger cornice. The existing facade has sort of a cornice, but it's just stepped out bricks and looks very modern. So this is something a little more traditional we're putting on there. On the upper right is an important one about the details for these thin bricks that we're using on the front. It's important that they wrap around the details, the openings at the doors and windows, and on the side, so that it doesn't look like wallpaper bricks. And then on the bottom in the middle is an example of the bricks. These are details for the windows, and this is mostly in the front. And actually in the upper left, you can see the new cornice wrapping over the existing one. The idea is to keep that if anybody would ever want to put it back again. These are window and door details. These are details from the mansard on the front. And this is photographs of mock-up that's still there.
Two, with the thin brick, are you just gluing it to the CMU or do you have any sort of system for installing it?
The intention at the moment is to glue it, it's not CMU, it's brick, but we're gonna leave the brick there, the facade that's there, and add a 3/4 inch brick on top of it. And the idea is to glue to that.
That detail could be really tricky because I know having detailed thin brick, there are often panelized systems that allow for drainage and also for the proper support, mechanically supporting as well as gluing. The other question is with that big arch in the front, which you're doing with thin brick, my worry always with arches today is the arch looks pasted on because when a brick arch was made in the past, the bricks were cut, it was designed to support. I realize this is a veneer that isn't designed to support, but how do we know that the details will look real and won't look like it's glued on?
Well, part of the reason is, that's part of the reason for using the L-shaped bricks there. That makes the outside brick look like a 4-inch thick brick. And we're gonna have, the wall is gonna be a full foot thick, right? And there'll be the ends of the thin bricks attached to that too. So everything you see from standing under the arch will be the brick, the new brick.
Thank you.
Not the other.
Commissioner Jefferson.
So, this is a new building, and when you designed the original new building, had a carriage house, designed an image of a carriage house, and it wasn't a carriage house. Now you're keeping the image of the carriage house while you're designing a residence. Why are you doing that?
Well, the original building was a residence. It was a single-family residence.
But with imagery of a carriage house, right?
Yes, it had a garage. Oops, let me go back there a little bit. This is probably the best. On the left is the way it is now, and that's a garage door, and there is a garage in there. What we're doing is building an arch that's bigger and is intended to give the imagery of a carriage house.
So you're keeping it as a garage? Cars are actually going to go in there? Is that?
No, the garage, the dark wall you see behind the arch is actually a fixed wall, right? But and the reason it steps back is because we have a parking pad out in front. Where are we?
It's all an image. It's just, it's not
So,
real. It's just.
right, it steps back, and the reason for that is to get enough space for a car to fit there. We need an 8x18 space for a car.
I see.
So that's a parking pad, and they're using most of the garage space is going to become living space.
Thank you very much.
Those joining via Zoom who wish to speak, please use the raise hand function. You'll be promoted to panelist, after which we ask you to unmute, state your name for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes to speak. The first speaker will be the Historic Districts Council.
This is Emma Bartley speaking on behalf of the Historic Districts Council. HDC supports this application. The proposed recladding and alterations are a significant improvement to the existing structure. We appreciate the applicant's effort to introduce a more contextual architectural vocabulary, including a redesigned facade composition and arched entrance that better relates to the historic character of the surrounding neighborhood. These changes will result in a more harmonious streetscape presence and an overall improvement to the historic district. Thank you.
The next speaker will be Christina Conroy.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Christina Conroy for the Victorian Society. Just so you know, the speaker was quite far away from the mic and I couldn't hear most of what he said. But anyway, the Victorian Society supports this proposed redesign. In scale and detail, we think that the proposed building is a better fit for the district and gives the building a presence among its neighbors that the existing design lacks. We're a bit concerned about the proposed use of thin brick over the existing masonry. It reminds us too much of the era of formstone and permastone, but as this building isn't historic, perhaps it doesn't matter. We also recommend that a different solution be found to the large trash enclosure at the property line. It's awkwardly placed in relation to the nicely detailed facade. Thank you, Commissioners.
Anyone else who wishes to speak, please use the raise hand function. Seeing none, I'll note for the record that Brooklyn Community Board 2 recommends approval on the condition the faux doors are reconfigured so the vertical lines don't conflict with the round arch, and that an excavation and access plan agreement is created with the neighboring properties.
Okay, thank you. Would you like to respond to any of the testimony?
Well, first of all, I'm sorry you couldn't hear me. I didn't realize. And I think we struggled a little bit with where to put the trash enclosure, because there isn't room to put it on the left, which was kind of the logical place, as far as we could figure out. We'll take a look at it and see if we can find something better.
Okay, thank you. So let's close the hearing. Vice Chair Master, would you make a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
Commissioner Ginsburg, would you second the motion?
Second.
All in favor say aye. Any opposed? The hearing is closed. Commissioner Jefferson, will you start this discussion?
I really love this building. When I saw it last night and I thought, oh, a two-story building with a roof, adding a roof to it, what a mistake. And then when I read further, it was a new building, 2023, I think it was, when it was constructed. And they added this mansard roof. That's such a beautiful, the good neighbor building with the one to the right, works really well. And then the archway, I said, why are they doing that? This huge arch, and it just, the way it works, it's just really lovely. It's just a really creative, simple project that works really well.
Thank you. Commissioner Goldblum?
Great, it's appropriate.
Commissioner Mahan?
I agree. This is appropriate. It's Hanson. It's a big improvement over what's there. I do think that there's a disconnect between the symmetry of the rooftop addition and asymmetry of the lower portion of the building. That perhaps is something that the applicant could look at with staff. But Commissioner Jefferson might revisit our conversation earlier about meaning, given his questions about whether this was a carriage house being new and so forth. But anyway, unique condition. Hanson.
Thank you. Vice Chair Master?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a huge improvement over what is existing now. I even like the mansard roof addition. I think that they can work with staff on some of the details in terms of the brick and what Commissioner Mahan had suggested, but overall, a huge improvement.
Commissioner Ginsburg?
I think it's appropriate. However, I would want the applicant to work with staff on the details of the thin brick and do a mock-up, and also be very conscious of long-term water management with the thin brick. But and how the arch is done so it looks like a real arch. I appreciate that they're looking at the three-dimensionality, but there'll need to be cuts, et cetera, in the brick to make it look like a real arch. But with that, I can find it appropriate.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Quimby?
As stated before, it's a very handsome design. And I would reiterate, it's all in the detail, so it could be worked out with staff.
Thank you. Commissioner Chu?
Yeah, I like the scale of this house, in terms of the design, composition, I think it's actually confused. I agree completely that the symmetry of the mansard doesn't relate to the lower portion. I would propose, getting rid of the dormer so it's not so awkward. My biggest issue is the thin brick, though. I don't feel good about any proposal with thin brick. I think that, again, the details are so much about the district and the care for the detail and the craft. I think that want the thin brick to be reconsidered. You could easily put, with the amount of effort going in to make thin brick look real, you could have just layered a new real brick that's on in front of this district. So I do want that to be. And all the conditions that the thin brick needs to achieve. Not really the right.
Okay, so I think we have enough votes, but with the recommendation that the applicant work with staff on the design composition, and also the detailing of the thin brick to include a mock-up. Commissioner Jefferson, would you make that motion, please?
In the matter of LPC -26 -09457. Application is to reclad and alter the facade and construct a rooftop addition. I recommend approval. I recommend that the approval with modifications, finding that the proposed work will not damage or eliminate any significant architectural features of this commission-approved building, that the eclectic mix of building size, types, and styles of this unusually varied streetscape, ranging from row houses to apartment buildings and the church, can support the presence of a one-story mansard-like row house rooftop addition on the building with a setback from the front and part of the rear of the building. And the added value will not overwhelm the building or the adjacent building. That the details and materials of the proposed one-story addition consist of slope standing seam metal cladding with multi-light window assemblies, and a dormer with an access door would be compatible with the cladding with the multi-window assemblies, and the dormer access will be compatible with the variety of additions and street wall conditions along the streetscape, including the historic mansard roof at the adjacent building. But the proposed front facade details features the black profile fiberglass cornice, multi-light metal-clad double-hung windows, and the new red brick cladding with soldier horses banding, header, and returns at existing openings will harmonize with other buildings on the streetscape. The thin brick cladding will be applied over the existing brick of the facade, being retained and is required to maintain alignment with the adjacent buildings and to remain behind the property line. That the proposed arch ground floor openings and insert wall recalling paired multi-light carriage doors will help reinforce the building's relationship to the historic carriage house found throughout the district. That the alterations and recladding of the rear facade, which is set back from the larger adjacent building, including the double height window and door assemblies at the basement and first floor, and that the integration of the roof top addition above the second floor will be in keeping with the character secondary facade of the residential building and addition, and that the work will not detract from the special architectural or historical character of the historic district. However, do I just say that they should work with staff, or should I? However, God should work with staff to deal with the following issues, which is the thin brick. And there's some question about the composition of the lower portion of the building.
Yeah.
And deal with the mansard issues. Anything else? There are 3 things, right?
It was the detailing of the thin brick with staff and doing a mock-up of that. And then also the composition is about sort of how the mansard and its features relates to the building below.
If it's possible, it's not just detailing of thin brick, but the strategy of thin brick versus a real brick.
We'll explore that as well.
To study the strategy, the thinking behind using thin brick rather than using normal size.
Thank you. Commissioner Goldblum, will you second, please? Okay, John, can you please call the vote?
Chair Dr. Savage,
Aye.
Vice Chair Master,
Aye.
Commissioner Chu,
Aye.
Commissioner Ginsburg.
Aye.
Commissioner Goldblum.
Aye.
Commissioner Quimby.
Aye.
Commissioner Jefferson.
Aye.
Commissioner Mahan.
Aye.
8 in favor, none opposed. The motion passes.
Okay, that's been approved with those modifications. Please work with staff. And let's move to the next item.
Next item is public hearing item number 3. LPC 26-10263. An application for a certificate of appropriateness in the Borough of Brooklyn, Block 2111, Lot 7501. 1 Hanson Place, the Williamsburg Savings Bank, Hanson Place, individual and interior landmark, also in the Brooklyn Academy of Music Historic District. This is a neo-Romanesque style commercial skyscraper with a designated Romanesque revival style interior ground floor banking hall and basement space designed by Halsey, McCormick, and Helmer and built in 1927 to 29. The application is to install a mezzanine, built-in features and kiosks, and alter historic features within the designated interior spaces, and install exterior signage and HVAC louvers.
All right, good morning, Commissioners. Drew Hartley from Atchison Doyle. Great to see you. We're going to talk about 1 Hanson Place today. We have lots of different sections. It's a very interesting building. Let me get started. All right, Williamsburg Savings Bank Tower is a Romanesque revival building built in 1929, Halsey, McCormick, and Helmer. Some interesting things about this building is that it is in a landmark district. It is an individual landmark, and today we're going to be talking about an interior landmark that's within the space. So it's very landmarked. As you enter the building from Hanson Place, the banking hall that was there historically is the interior landmark. It includes the ground floor. You'll see the blue areas are specialty floors. They're marble floors, but there's a blue line around all of this, which shows the designated area. The white floor on the right and left sides of this space are plain concrete floors. They're not decorative. So we'll show that to you later. And then from that main lobby, as you enter on Hanson Place, if you go up a level, there's a mezzanine floor, which is also designated. And if you go down a level, there's a reception area downstairs that is designated. We'll show you the modifications to those spaces. So it's a fantastic space if you have not been there. It has not been open to the public for quite some time. There was the Brooklyn Flea Market was there quite some time ago. There have been events, but no permanent tenants have been in the space since the building was turned to residential use. So we're looking to open this to the public and make it a functioning space. Interestingly, the space is basically a basilica plan. It has a center aisle and 2 side aisles. And then this is looking from the mezzanine on the right-hand side, looking down the center aisle. There are arches connecting the columns to the exterior walls on either the right and left side aisles. And the photo on the left-hand side is the mezzanine upstairs. These are views of those side aisles. You'll see the right-hand view has a plain concrete floor. The left-hand view has terrazzo floor, so it's one step down, but the center aisle really has the primary marble floor with lots of detail. All right, proposed use. The operator that is proposed to use the space is a group called Casa Tua. They have 2 main businesses. They have a private club and restaurant business, which they opened a location on the Upper East Side. And they also have a more mass market product, which is Casa Tua Cucina, which is this location will be Casa Tua Cucina, which is a food hall. There's several different open cooking stations, and we'll show you how that works. First, we wanted to look at bank halls in general and other interior designated spaces that the commission has reviewed. One of the common themes with bank halls is that they are designed to control access. There's usually a very small front door, and teller windows were designed to keep the money in and keep the people out. These constraints to these buildings have always been a challenge for adaptive reuse. We personally have looked at this space for quite some time. It was going to be a Borders bookstore back in the day. There's been a lot of retail uses that have really felt challenged by the constraints of those teller windows or constraints of circulation and accessibility of these spaces. But I believe this use is a very good use, adaptive reuse for the space, and we have minimal changes that are required because of it. So back to the teller windows. Large teller window reduction in a lot of interior landmarks is something that the commission has approved. Another approach to an interior landmark is, I'll call it a furniture approach. Adding elements inside of the space, a bar, furniture, banquettes that can be reversible is something that has been successful and the commission has approved previously. This is an example at the Billard House. A recent example is 4951 Chambers Street, where teller windows were removed, openings were made in walls, new partitions were installed, all to adaptively reuse this space as an event space. We have a lot of the similar type modifications in that proposal. Okay, so on the left is the existing nave, I guess we could call it. On the right is our furniture solution. There are 3 main bars that go down the center aisle. They are intended to sit on the floor lightly. We'll look at those details in particular, but these are being placed in here for this use, and they can be removed in future time if the use changes. On the left, there are existing tables that we're proposing to relocate, and I'll show that to you further. Okay, so looking at a diagram of the space, we've highlighted the blue floor in the center aisle as the significant feature of marble and decorative marble and a surface that is highly figured. That is where we're showing these bars. So the 2 blue portions, top on the page and low on the page, the top one is a terrazzo floor and the lower piece is a marble floor. So these are significant features that we're cognizant of. The layout of the space is that there are 3 bars down the center aisle. There's a circular one as you enter the space. There's a larger bar in the middle, and a raw bar at the end. The cooking happens in the side aisles, happens in the places where we have less significant features of floor and we're impacting space less. Right when you come in, there's a grab and go coffee pastry to the left, and there's a salad station to the right. So those are open spaces. But as you move down the aisles, the cooking areas really need a ceiling on them. They have cooking hoods, they have mechanical systems. They need to be enclosed for cooking for health code reasons. So this is a diagram of the ventilation that's required for those cooking hoods. Our approach is primarily to take the air out of the cooking hood and go down through the floor and locate ductwork below this space, and then out the building. Okay, next, we are inserting a structural system that is completely independent of the interior landmark space. These are blue columns that are shown as a lightweight structure. It's a 6-inch steel column that happens. It doesn't attach to the columns. It doesn't attach to the exterior walls. It goes through the floor and attaches to steel that's beneath the floor. So there's a penetration in the floor and then connections to steel below. On top of those beams in that independent structural system, we're proposing a new mezzanine on the left and right hand aisles of this space. That mezzanine is not connected to the large stone columns in the space. It is not connected to the exterior walls. It is an independent structure that floats within the space. Looking at what is required, this is a demo plan, looking at what needs to be relocated to make this work. The rectangles and circles in the center aisle are those tables that exist today. There was actually a previous approval several years ago to relocate those tables, and that's our plan as well. We're moving them out of this space, but they'll be retained on site. Second is, there is a portion of a teller window down here and a knee wall up here that need to be removed to make circulation work and program space. And then there are several doors throughout the space that are being removed or infilled to make the program work. And then finally, there is one new opening here and one new opening here. One is for egress to get adequate people out of the space. And one is for, this is solid fuel at the pizza oven hood. It needs to have a direct connection to an air scrubber and needs to go directly to the roof. So labeling of the different cooking areas, you can see the green areas don't require a ceiling because they're grab and go areas. There's no cooking happening in those areas, and they're first things you encounter in the space. It's also symmetrical, so there's a high ceiling on either the left and right side as you enter. And then the pink areas as you move through the space have ceilings and are enclosed for cooking. What does it look like? This is a raw bar right as you enter the space. As we mentioned, we have the bars lining the center aisle. And then just a closer look at that. The bakery is on the left. You can come in and grab a coffee. Salad is on the right. You can come in and grab a salad. And then those cooking spaces happen as you walk into the space further. Something to note while we're on this view is the arches on the left and the right are still visible as you enter the space. We are infilling those with an antique mirror to hide the mechanicals that are behind some of those locations. And that's a common infill that we have, whether there's mechanicals behind or not, to screen the lower ceilings that are in some of those cooking areas. Okay, mezzanine. As we go upstairs, there are two knee walls that need to be opened so that we can have circulation to our new mezzanine spaces. And these are existing flagpoles that are in the space that need to be relocated. And the proposed plan on the right is grab-and-go retail, and on the left, the yellow is new seating for the restaurant. So looking out into space, it still presents itself as a basilica plan with a primary center aisle and secondary side aisles. If you haven't been to the space, please come. It's fantastic. All right, downstairs. I will try to make this efficient. We have a lobby when you come downstairs. It used to be where you arrived before you went to your safety deposit box, highlighted in blue. We are doing more work downstairs, but this is the only interior landmark portion of the cellar. The vault space is being turned into a private events space, and back of house kitchens and mechanical spaces are on this floor. But focused on the entry, it looks like this today on the left. We're modifying non-historic lighting. Those two light fixtures are coming out. The ceiling gets a new finish and new modern lighting is installed. The chandelier will be relamped, but the fixture will remain in place. So it's essentially painting the ceiling. Okay, exterior. Exterior modifications are signage and some louvers for ventilation. So the first is the signage. The existing signage locations we will reuse for the new signage. They are pin-mounted, halo-lit metal signage. So the rendering might look like it's glowing, but it's challenging to render a halo-lit sign. So it's intended that it's laser-cut metal with a halo light. As you move to the front door, there are bronze plaques left and right of the main entrance that replace existing signage. The signage this type of signage was previously approved for a general signage package that was never built, but the approach of pin-mounted letters and halo lighting is something that the commission has approved previously. The second piece is upper left-hand corner is a window. As we talked about in the beginning, the bank was designed to keep people in or out. It's the same for ventilation. We need to bring more air into the space to enable cooking to happen. So these two windows are high off the street, and we're proposing to turn them into windows. And then on the back of the building, this is the rear lot line. We are proposing to increase the ventilation in the back, increase the size of the doghouse in the back for exhaust. Okay. Contributing features.
I think you can continue.
Okay. All right. So the existing materials on the left and the proposed material palette on the right-hand side are very complementary. This space works very well for this use. So there's a lot of similarities in the materials. The designation report calls out all of the significant features on the right-hand side, the light fixtures, a lot of the marbles. So we went through most of these, we went through all of these, and almost all of them are unchanged and are staying the same. Our approach is additive. These bars are being added to the space rather than removing a lot of this material. Looking at the bars specifically in the center aisle, we looked carefully at penetrations to the floor. The bars have electric and water lines and floor drains. And first, we prioritize trying to reuse existing penetrations in the floor. there are existing electrical penetrations that we will be reusing. And then second, we came up with a plan to group some of those other utilities together so that we are targeting interventions that only displace one piece of stone or one medallion that can be taken out and preserved. So we have a 4 penetration plan for those bars. Highlighting here as well, the columns on the side aisles, again, they're going through plain concrete floors. Okay, so the mezzanine is a structure which is primarily seating up top. The details of the mezzanines go around the columns, and there is a handrail at the exterior walls as well. There's a gap between the exterior wall. There's a gap at each column. The gap around the columns is 3 inches and 8 inches as you get to the rear wall, but again, this is floating. It doesn't connect to any interior landmark materials. I think this is helpful to see as I was speaking before. The grab and go areas don't have a ceiling, so it's clear up to the underside of the deck. This is a significantly tall floor to floor. I think we are at 17 feet roughly to the floor level up here. But all of this is clear in the grab and go areas where we have cooking. We have a transom, which is antique mirror and metal framing. And this is a fully enclosed cooking area. And so some have low ceilings and some have high ceilings. And I'll show you those details. As we connect back to the existing mezzanine, there are 2 ramps that cantilever from the side structures and come around to the mezzanine on the left and the right. This is the mirrored opposite side. So in section, that is a lowered ceiling at a cooking area. It has MEP space above for precipitators and ductwork to handle the exhaust. And this is the first run of a stair to get up to the mezzanine. So there is a location on both side aisles where there's stairs to these mezzanines. We have a series of these, of the different conditions that occur. So this would be, has a transom in front of it and has a tall ceiling. We looked specifically at the historic teller windows and pushed back the transoms. It's pushed back 1 foot 1 behind those teller windows. So there's a clear separation in plane between the historic material and the new material. This carries up and then to the handrail above, but we made the intentional move to push that back. In rendering, we have existing on the left, proposed on the right. You can feel that in space, so that plane is pushed back. And then this particular rendering, I think, is the pizza area. So you can walk through the teller windows. You can sit at the pizza bar and have a pizza with the, I guess this is the high ceiling area. This is the lower ceiling area. This occurs in some of the cooking areas. This is the pasta area on the right-hand side. So on the left is existing condition. On the right is the pasta prep area. So it's a cooking space, which needs a cleanable ceiling above. As I previewed previously, these are details of the infills at the arches. And you can see the proposed images on the right-hand side of infilling those arches. Some of these arches you can see from both sides. Others are concealed because they're in cooking areas. But the arches are visible throughout the proposed design. So this is a glazed infill where we have a drop ceiling hiding. happens at the Grab and Go Coffee. And then inside the pastry, you can see the lowered ceiling. Lower right-hand image here, this is the portion of the teller windows which we are removing. We're removing it for the stair to get to the mezzanine. Pulling that out. And then finally, a view on the left of the knee wall at the existing mezzanine, and on the right of those cantilevered ramps. There's a level difference between the proposed mezzanines and the existing mezzanine. Those ramps are ramped down to get back to that level. So mezzanine is primarily seating. I will give you the overview and I'll show you that we have details for other conditions, but the intention here is that we are putting cement board down first, a slip sheet down first on top of the marble floors, then cement board, and building up a waterproof membrane on top of that so that each of the bars will have a self-contained waterproof floor to them. They're not going to be dropping glasses on the historic marble floors. They're going to be built up to protect those surfaces. The bar stools also have a heavy base. They have these at some of their other locations. They're not anchored through the floor, so we will not have anchoring through any of the bar stools. And the racks above the bar are all supported on the die wall. So this is a structure that gets built and is self-supported. Just sitting on the floor. It does require anchoring at select locations, but we've minimized that as much as possible. The sushi bar has the same detailing. The one that I will call out is the podium. This is the first image that you saw. The podium will stay in place, and we're encapsulating that podium. We tried to use it, but the height of it doesn't really work for service. This proposal is to encapsulate it, keep it in place, protect it, but allow the correct seating dining height of a bar to occur there. So the historic material will stay in place and be. Skip through some of these there, similar details. And then the approach to lighting is the existing light fixtures will be relamped and new lighting will be incorporated into them. There are non-historic light fixtures that will be removed. And the bars will have integrated lighting. So just a final shot showing furniture in the space. A lot of the images we showed without furniture for clarity, but clearly there will be many people and lots of furniture in the space as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, do we have any questions? I saw Commissioner Goldblum.
Thanks. Do you have a section at the windows? Mezzanine, where the mezzanine meets the windows? I saw those, but it wasn't clear to me where the glass is and where the glass isn't.
The glass starts about at that notch, but good point.
And on the other, so the glass is on one side and the other is blind side. So the intention is that the floor will not be visible from the exterior.
That's correct. The windows are also
right. I mean,
slightly frosted.
If you could see.
Yeah, right.
Okay. About how much separation is there at that point between the edge of the floor assembly and the wall?
From the flat surface of the wall, it's 8 inches, but at each of the windows, it pushes in further, so we're probably a foot and a half.
Okay, thanks.
Commissioner Jefferson?
So I have 2 questions. One, the exhaust. How do you handle that? Does it go straight through the building, the tower, or does it? How do you get rid of the exhaust?
The exhaust?
Okay, yeah.
Let me. I don't know if I want to flip back and forth with all these. There's a lot of slides, but let me go to the diagram. Okay, so the hoods on the left-hand aisle, they pull up, there's ductwork, and then there's a penetration through the floor, through the plain concrete floor, that brings the ductwork into the cellar space. And then the ductwork traverses the cellar space, and there's a shaft downstairs. Along this line, there are scrubbers that precipitators that take a lot of the scents out of the out of the exhaust, and it exhausts basically clean air. And then there's a setback, a second floor setback on the lot line on the back side of the building where exhaust will occur.
But it doesn't go up to all the way up the tower, does it?
It does not. It's
Does
on
not.
the second floor.
Okay, okay. The second question, this is a food court. And every food court I go to, there's signage everywhere. And I didn't see any signage in your perspectives. Are they signs? What is this?
I think the one, it's a good question. The one difference between this and a lot of food halls is that they have multiple vendors in food halls, and this is all one operator. You come in the front door and you can sit down and order the pizza, or order the pasta, or order a salad, and they're coming from the different kind of display cooking areas. But it is not like, you know, typical food hall where it's multiple vendors with multiple signage.
Well, thank you.
Commissioner Ginsburg?
So I have a number of questions. First, are the kitchens all electric?
No, they are not all electric.
Okay. I'm going to suggest you go back to the drawing board. I just saw the Hotel Marcel last week. It has fully electric kitchens. Now, besides certain energy advantages, it means they can use recirculating hoods and don't need all the ductwork you're showing. It also means the kitchen is not as hot, that never gets above about 80 degrees. And I think if you looked at doing all electric, you could solve a lot of the other problems you've had to do gymnastics to solve. So that's question one. Question two, did you look at any part of the mezzanine floor being glass, particularly around the arches?
We have looked at a glass floor structure in the past, but not as part of this iteration. So I understand what you're saying is
Right.
having a view to the arches below the floor.
Question three, could the infill above transoms above the teller windows have less framing and be more glass? And then question four, at the podium, it doesn't seem you have any location for somebody in a wheelchair, which is required by ADA with the lower counter. Have you taken that into, am I just missing that, or?
Yeah, we do have it. We were just showing the front of it. There is a lower
Thank you.
location.
Okay, Commissioner Chu?
Yeah, I've got. Oh, he said they could look at that.
We can look into it, yeah.
It's only because you've got such a detailed set here that we can analyze. I'm grateful for that. About the existing fabric, there are renderings, and I don't know what's accurate or what's just the rendering, but there's a lot of ornament on the existing archways that are missing in the proposed. Does that mean you're getting rid of that?
That
You
is
just didn't put it in the red.
correct,
Thank
yes.
you. Okay. The other thing is the teller stations have a lot of beautiful figures.
Yes.
And on the tops. Is
Yeah.
that?
That's all staying.
It's just not in the render.
Correct.
Okay, so that's all layered with the new upper transom setback from it.
Yes,
be
all the
set back.
existing remains and is restored.
Okay, can you go to a rendering that has that view of the teller station? Oh,
Is that too far?
I think one that shows, that's good, that's good.
Okay.
Okay, so the details are all retained, just they're not in here.
Correct.
I appreciate the handrail detail that pulls away from the column 3 inches, and it floats all install the new mezzanine off of the historic fabric. In elevation, you don't need to show me now. I just want to be ensured that that same level of detail has been taken at where the transom intersects with the column as well.
Correct.
At all those, that's actually much more complicated than the handrail.
As it goes around the
Yeah.
back of the column, yes.
That creates a reveal so it doesn't crash into the
Yes.
stone. Is the glass in the transom mirror, or is it
It is,
change depending on what's behind?
it's, right now it's proposed as consistently mirror.
Mirror.
And an antique mirror in each
Okay,
location.
so all that layer is antique mirror.
Yes.
The floor pattern, the new islands that are on the floor pattern, is there an overlay syncing to the pattern? I realize you kept the circles that were planted right on the patterns, but then the main island, I assume it's just too large. so
It's
it
just too
doesn't
large, doesn't align.
over it.
Yes, correct.
The signage, just to clarify, the exterior signage, is it, you said halo, does it have a front metal face and a back lit? Is that what's happening?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So it's not, it looks white in your rendering. It's in fact a metal that we're seeing on the face?
It's metal, laser cut metal
With the
backlight.
backlit
Yes.
halo.
Right.
Okay, all right. I think that's it. Thank you.
Vice Chair Master.
I also have a couple of questions. You said the mezzanine level. You said that there's existing mezzanine and that there's a difference in height between the proposed versus the existing. Can you kind of review that so that we can kind of get a sense of that?
Sure. The new mezzanine height is dictated because our structure flies directly over those side arches. So we're not impacting those side arches. Our structure is spanning over them. So that is the arches that are in here, our structure flies above. So that sets this floor level, and the existing mezzanine level is lower than that. So we have a different view, but there's a ramp that goes from this level and connecting back to the existing mezzanine level.
So we're using the existing mezzanine and the proposed mezzanine for seating?
The existing mezzanine space is mostly grab and go retail,
Okay.
and the proposed mezzanine is for seating.
Thank you. Also, in terms of the lighting, I know that you said you're using a lot of the existing lighting features, but in the evening time, when you don't get sunlight from the windows, how do you light like the mezzanine level, the seating area, using a lot of the existing lighting?
Yeah, so we are definitely developing the lighting plan in detail, but the intention is to reuse the chandeliers and add light fixtures, both light and downlight, and spotlights to them in a way that's not visible, that conceals additional light fixtures.
Thank you. And also, can you just go through, I assume that the plan, when we're developing this plan, is to make as much as possible reversible?
Absolutely.
And so can you just talk to what might not be reversible? I know that there's some penetrations on the floor. You're being very careful about that. But can you kind of talk to what you have to do in order to get the food hall in that may not be reversible?
Yeah, I think I don't want to click through all of this, but the demo plan is helpful to show that. So these are the pieces, well, the tables could be put back in place, but removal of the teller window here, this is a new staircase going up to the mezzanine, and removal of this knee wall are really the features that are going away, and a new opening in the walls. The rest of it stays intact. The details of the teller windows stay, the flooring stays. There are new penetrations in the floor, so some of that will likely be removed. That material will be removed. but those would be as minimal as possible.
Thank you.
Commissioner Jefferson.
Conceptually speaking, if you go to your perspective, or anyone, on the mezzanine level, in terms of the relationship between the volume and the new addition, are you thinking in any way in contrast, or are you thinking, how are you thinking about the relationship between the new and the old? Is there anything that we should know?
Well, I think it was important for us to make sure that the existing historic teller windows are primary. They are forward of the transoms that exists above that. The detailing around the columns and this new structure not touching the walls is designed to look as if it is removable, or at least gesture to the fact that the historic structure is primary and our new structure is secondary. And then the third piece of that is that the mezzanines go in the side aisles. Center aisle has always been primary. There were always teller windows on this division between the center aisle and the side aisle, so we're using the same logic for where these structures go.
So take the handrails. They could be made out of stainless steel, they could be painted, they could be blue. What is you thinking about? And then you have the windows on the mezzanine level that are, I think we said, dark mirror or something. What is the thinking? What is the architectural thinking?
Well, there's actually a great alignment here with the brand, with Gasatua and their brand imaging and the existing space, where I understand that, maybe it could be a modern intervention in a historic space that makes it clear what's old and what's new. Here we're leaning closer to the existing because that is so consistent with their brand, and making a unified space that is closer in the same language of materiality.
Thank you.
Okay, do we have any other questions, commissioners? No. One more. Commissioner Chu.
Just to finish this, the upper floor mezzanine where it hits the exterior facade, what is it? It's held off the stone enough to run the whole handrail there.
Yes.
And the sill of the exterior window is at the flush, or where does that sit?
It's about the floor level. It's
about
slightly
the floor
below.
level.
Yeah.
Okay. So you kind of have, does the flooring go all the way in, or you created a reveal or something?
It's actually where the existing HVAC comes out of that area.
So there's a slot and a grate.
There's a gap between the floor and the wing.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, before we move to testimony, I just want to note that we've been joined by Commissioner Chen, and Commissioner Mahan has departed. So seeing that there's nobody in the room, let's move to Elizabeth Lee for Zoom testimony.
Those joining via Zoom who wish to speak, please use the raise hand function. You'll be promoted to panelist, after which we ask you to unmute, state your name for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes to speak. The first speaker will be the Historic Districts Council.
This is Emma Bartley speaking on behalf of the Historic Districts Council. While HDC supports an adaptive reuse of this space, we oppose this proposal in its current form. The Williamsburg Savings Bank is one of New York City's most significant landmark interiors, distinguished by its extraordinary volume, rich materials, decorative artwork, and remarkable level of craftsmanship. Rather than allowing these features to remain the defining elements of the space, the proposal introduces an extensive amount of furnishings and new construction that would diminish and obscure the historic interior. We are also concerned about the apparent removal or displacement of historic furnishings and decorative elements, and ask that more of these be retained in the design. But the proposed new mezzanine is our biggest concern. By inserting a new floor level into a space that was intentionally designed as a grand, uninterrupted banking hall, the proposal compromises one of the building's most important architectural qualities. The mezzanine, together with the numerous kiosks, built-in structures, and freestanding interventions, would fragment the space and obstruct views of significant historic features. HDC thus urges the Commission to require a more restrained approach that preserves the openness, visibility, and integrity of this extraordinary space. Thank you.
The next speaker will be Christina Conroy.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Christina Conroy for the Victorian Society, New York. Now, we would love to see this magnificent space put to use and open to the public, but a proposal such as this one is inappropriate. In fact, we can hardly think of a less appropriate plan for an interior landmark. This proposal would remove significant historic features and would cover others. The bar in the center of the floor has no design relationship to the space. Now, most critically, the mezzanines would obscure significant features and completely change the way the cathedral-like space is experienced. The unique features of an interior landmark, like a scenic landmark, is that it's about space. How space is perceived in 3 dimensions and the experience of moving through it as much as it's about the surfaces. So in our view, the only way a proposal like this could even be seriously considered is to require an escrow. Now, that would have to fully fund and mandate restoration of the space to its pre-existing condition upon departure of the proposed tenant. No extensions and no modifications by the new tenants allowed, only full restoration. I mean, even then, we doubt that we could support the extent of the changes proposed, which would have no time limit. Thank you, Commissioners.
The next speaker will be Andrew Cronson.
Good afternoon. My name is Andrew Cronson. I'm a recent Columbia grad and architectural historian. Known as the Empire State Building of Brooklyn, the Williams Savings Bank stands out within the borough. Francis Maroney called it one of the top 10 skyscrapers in New York. Andrew Dolkart called the interior one of the finest in Brooklyn. Most interesting to me is the brilliant 63-foot-high banking hall, which imbues the kind of spirituality one would normally find in a church sanctuary. It recalls Bartholomew, a Lombardi fantasy to instill wonder through rich iconography that could be universal tales told out of carvings. 22 different types of marble were laid out along spectacular cosmatesque mosaics by Angelo Manganati. Elsewhere, fixtures were executed by P.E. Guerin with sumptuous ironwork by Oscar Bach. This is the kind of handiwork treatment which rightfully earned a place as an interior landmark. When this proposal was first soft launched on Instagram of all places where I found it, I thought it was some sort of AI-generated fever dream. This is a pretty serious change in the appearance. With a dearth of new landmark designations at unprecedented lows currently, the gravity of these precious interiors become all the more apparent. This block in particular has been marred by the recent bastardization of the United Methodist Church next door. I watched the approval to remove Guastavino ceiling and resplendent stained glass windows as if the resulting carcass was of a disjointed tower above was nothing of concern. We all know better can be done in all of these cases. One might liken these alterations to the vault under the Queensboro Bridge, which became Guastavino's. However, the distinction is that was utilitarian. The dominance of having an open void which spans multiple stories is a kind of drama that was intended. By creating that would alter the visual reading. The Manganati mosaics would be diminished greatly in the floor as well. When you question appropriateness, you should determine whether this concept can be done with the elements in place, or if it's even the best concept to be put in entirely. Looking to similar cases like the Baltimore Trust Company, which became the Under Armour Performance Center in Baltimore, or the Gerard Company, which is now the Ritz-Carlton Philadelphia, use is possible while ensuring the distinctiveness of these places remain. One can only imagine what was going through the heads of the Williamsburg Savings Board in making such a statement. I think it was abundantly clear. If you work hard, have careful thrift, and probably a few prayers, even the lowliest layperson can one day transcend their station. or at least an immigrant could one day join the professional classes. That sort of generosity in being in place and in service is just as salient today. The continued integrity of this wonderful room ensures that those stories are able to continue on. Thank you very much.
Anyone else who wishes to speak, please use the raise hand function. Seeing none, I'll note for the record that Brooklyn Community Board 2 and Downtown Brooklyn Partnership recommend approval.
Okay, thank you. Would you like to respond to any of the testimony?
Yeah, I would like to respond. So I think the proposed use of this space is one that minimizes the interventions. There have been several other ideas for this space that have been much more impactful, would have been much more impactful on the space. Just the fact that we're only removing a portion of one of the teller windows and a knee wall, the demolitions and removal of historic material is minimal. And we feel that this use is appropriate for this space. And the comment of, another use might be better here. I just think this is the use that we have. And I think it is an appropriate use for this space.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, any final questions? Okay, no. Let's close the hearing then. Commissioner Ginsburg, would you make a motion?
So moved.
Commissioner Chen, would you second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? The hearing is closed. Commissioner Goldblum, will you start the discussion?
Thank you very much. Okay, there's so much one could think about with the church analogy to this space. From the money church now changing to the food church, Stations of the Cross, lots of things to think about, but none of them relevant to us. I think that the key for me in understanding and kind of drawing a line as to what is appropriate and what is not in this space is to kind of think about the way the space is experienced and what its salient key features are. I think that for me, the key feature here, apart from obviously the nave itself, is the relationship of the windows and the aisle to the nave. To that extent, I think that the proposed mezzanine is close to being okay, but can be made better. I think that to the extent that it blocks the experience of the windows is kind of the key, and of the columns perhaps, is the area that I look at the most critically perhaps. I think that I would recommend that the mezzanine be cut back to sneak behind the columns as opposed to scooping around them, and that the detailing of the mezzanine be tightened so that the structure was overall reduced in height so that the floor level of the mezzanine could come down as low as possible. The more you compress the mezzanine floor, the more you push it back, the more visible those windows will be as you proceed down the nave. So I think that that's achievable with this program with minimal disruption to their programmatic needs. And I think that would constitute a significant improvement in the project that would make the space better experienced within the general ambit of their proposal. I think Mark's idea about an all-electric kitchen is fantastic and would really take a lot of the load off of this job. There was a great documentary made a few years ago about the Trois Gros restaurant in France, southern France. Certainly a high dining environment, all electric. So it's certainly it shouldn't be seen as a compromise to culinary goals to go that way, and it would certainly make this. It would take some of the burden off of that mezzanine, and it would allow those transoms to become more transparent, which again would enhance the experience of the landmark. In general, though, I mean, the only other minor comment I have is that when they are removing materials, I imagine that they're going to retain them and store them on site, especially the decorative wrought iron, the decorative stonework at the mezzanine. Those should all be stored on site. I do think that the lighting is something that's going to require some creativity, but I'm sure the staff is well up to that. In general, though, I think it's an amazingly detailed presentation, really, really careful and thoughtful. And I think this is the right use for this space. This space has languished in underutilization or non-utilization for a very long time. And history seems to have shown that these kind of food service related uses are pretty much the only ones that succeed in these kind of spaces. So I think this is a great opportunity for this space. And I think with a few minor tweaks, it can be appropriate.
Okay, thank you. Vice Chair Master.
Thank you. Yeah, I want to say that as somebody who does commercial real estate, it's really hard to find an appropriate tenant here. And I do feel that a food hall tenant is probably one of the ideal tenants you can have. I mean, the space is too large for a retail tenant. Essentially, you'd have to cut it up, which you'd have problems with the entryway. You'd have significantly more intervention here. Office use, you'd have other issues. So really, to retain the open space of it, it would be, a restaurant use, like an event catering hall or a food hall. And what I also like about the food hall concept is that you bring everybody into the space. So a lot of people, catering hall is more limited. Your everyday person can kind of come into the space on a regular basis and enjoy the experience of the space. I think overall it's been very well designed. You've used the teller space for the kitchen use. So kind of closing it up is not that bad because you still get to experience, the main entryway and the soaring ceilings, and you can experience the arches. I understand that for kitchen use, you do need an enclosed space. And so, I mean, other than the electric versus gas issue, I also understand that ventilation is extremely important. And I think you've been fairly creative in ventilating the space, which is one of the prime, difficulties for commercial space, turning it into restaurant use. I'm glad that you're retaining and showing off a lot of the original flooring in the centerway, which is very nice. And I understand that adding the mezzanine level, which is reversible, is critical in terms of adding seating, which is also extremely important here to make this concept work. I understand Commissioner Goldblum's reasoning in terms of lowering it. I'm actually fine with it as is. And the reason I say that is I think it aligns with the bottom of the windows. So I think that if you do lower it, you probably have some issues in terms of blocking it from the exterior and showing it. But I think that's something that you guys can work out. I did ask the question about how much of it is reversible. And it sounds like, other than the floor penetration, you've basically retained a lot of the original elements. I think a very small portion of the teller window space and the knee wall. It's been surprising to me how creative you guys were in retaining a lot of the original architectural features. And I appreciate how you've really gone out of your way to show and highlight the arches in any way that you can. And then in terms of the signage in the front, I think that's fine. It's very minimal. It's really where the signage currently exists. And I'm actually surprised that you didn't ask for more signage, given that the hall is quite large. And for food, you typically do want, more signage. So overall, I would say this is a great adaptive reuse project. I really hope it goes forward because it's a great use of this space and it's going to bring a lot of people in to see this beautiful individual interior landmark. And so I can find it appropriate as presented.
Thank you. Commissioner Ginsburg.
So first I want to say it's great to see a proposal for using the space because as we've all said, it's hard to use. And this is a very thoughtful presentation. I'm not going to add everything, but a sort of a few main points. I really want you to go back and look at an all-electric kitchen to reduce the mechanical, to reduce those ceilings, because I think it'll make a better project. And although, having looked at it and done all-electric industrial kitchens, the equipment is more expensive, but the mechanical is less. And then the long-term operating is significantly less. And if you have questions, the Hotel Marcel is a great example of this. The thing that Commissioner Goldblum didn't talk much about, what worries me about the enclosure and the mezzanine is the loss of seeing all the arches. Those arches are just phenomenal. So that if there can be, first of all, if you can get rid of some of the mechanical, so maybe around the arches, they're not having a drop ceiling, you could potentially have glass to see in. And ideally, the mezzanine would be an all glass floor. I realize that that gets expensive, but potentially for a few feet around the arches, you could go to something glass to again get the light coming in on the arches and try to free them up as much as you can. Besides that, I find the signage fine, the other work fine, and I'd just like you to come back having looked at this so that we, in my opinion, we can approve it because you're close to appropriate if you can address those issues.
Okay, Commissioner Chen?
Yeah, my apologies for being late so I missed the beginning part of the presentation, but I see I agree with a lot of the comments of my colleagues. I think that, first of all, make sure that the reversibility of whatever original material, at least store it or maintain it, to the degree possible. That will be a nice feature. And I leave it up to those of you, because I missed the detail about the mezzanines, the arches. But I think that the comment about maintaining, letting it be more visible to the degree possible, that will be great. But overall, I agree that this is a great, handsome space about to be, reused, and that the public will get to see it to the degree what good as a landmark if the public cannot see it. So looking forward to seeing the studies and further revisions.
Thank you. Commissioner Quimby.
A very detailed presentation. And I believe, based with some of the comments that have already been presented, it could help make it even better. I think one of the big things about the hall itself is to maintain and express the verticality of it. It's a big feature of the space itself. And I believe some of the ideals that have been presented, potentially pushing the mezzanines back away from the columns, actually thinking about changing the materiality of some of these transoms. And then also the suggestion of turning all electric, which would actually remove a lot of some of the bulk space, would be very helpful. And I'm assuming that's probably the reason for changing the one of the windows on the exterior to a louver to probably help with the makeup air. But I think overall what's presented is very nice, and a lot of thought has gone into it. But I would like to see a further rendition of trying to maintain the existing quality of the space.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Chu?
Yeah, good discussion. I think that as we look at this space and appreciate why it is great, and it was designated, it is definitely the volume and the experience being in the hall. the two things that I think could be improved. And I do want to say, I really do appreciate the level of detail that has been put into this application. And I do think that it gives us a lot more to understand and to make suggestions, but I think it has the potential to be a really, really nice project as a revitalization of an existing historic space that really hasn't had much use. The two issues that I think in the proposal that could be rethought or adjusted are, the first is Michael's comment about the mezzanine. I completely agree. I think that if you were to express the mezzanines less as if they were always there and attached to the structure and let it float. So I'm imagining they could feel more like bridges that were inserted into a historic building. Those buttresses have a structural aspect to them. They would literally sit on the buttresses and therefore create a relationship between what was added to the historic condition. And I do think that pushing those transoms back to a line that was behind the columns would diminish the sense of mass in here, and what has become a little bit more of a canyon than right now, a much more open visual space, and again help distinguish the historic condition and from the new. I think that proportionally that also helps because it's a little equal right now, and if it got set back, increased the view to the exterior windows and reduced its sense of presence, it would be more of a terraced condition. I think that could be quite nice. The other thing is, if there was any way to recapture the middle of the space and enjoy that central area, which unfortunately is occupied by a huge island right now. And I look at the plan and I keep wondering, could the island have been moved to the end so that you can seat and really enjoy this mid-central space, which is where all the action is in terms of views. I understand the approach. I'm not opposed to the design strategy in general, but I feel like these beautiful floors, a lot of it's being covered by the central island, and the place to gather right there is also being blocked by the island. So if that could be looked at, if there was a way to vacate the central portion of this volume again and not occupy it with such a large island, I think that would also help the experience. So those are my comments.
Extremely well thought through project. I don't have much more to add. I think my fellow commissioners have come up with a list of options that would do two things, would make the space, because the space is the most important part of this project, and look at the vertical elements and see how we could open it up more to keep the spatial concept, the focus, not the mezzanine, not the objects and so on. But I think the architect has a lot of things that you could think about.
Okay, so I think you've heard a lot of helpful comments. I think a lot of very positive ones as well, but I think a couple suggestions for you to go back and investigate, including the issue of the electric kitchen and whether you'd be able to pull back the mezzanine or reduce the size of the mezzanine, and looking at the materiality of the mezzanine, opening up the arches potentially, and the placement of the bar in the main nave. So I think if you could look at those issues and come back, I think that would be very helpful, but I think you heard a lot of very positive comments as well. So thank you. And we're going to take no action today. Oh, okay, and with that, I think we. Okay, so we are going to break for lunch, and right now it is 1 o'clock. So let's try and return at 1:30. Thank you.